Hello and welcome to episode 131 of Masters of the Forge. I have Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Adam.
And Brian. Hi, Brian.
Howdy, hey.
Howdy, hey. It's early, and we are here to talk about Drukhari and your campaigns, and that's why we brought Brian on. He has quite the hobby pedigree. He is one of the hosts of the Splintermind podcast, a delightful podcast about the Drukhari and multiple other Eldari-ish topics. And normally, you know, when we bring a guest on, we don't ask them to participate in our intro and hobby progress. That's just rude. So, Brian, I really want you to... I was really hoping that you could join us in our hobby progress segment here and talk about... I was really interested in the conversions that you've been doing. So, unlike you know, sometimes the hobby progress section can get a little laborious, but we try to wrap in tips and stuff to make it relevant instead of us just talking about ourselves. So I was really fascinated by your conversions, and you know, I've been reading about the Dark Eldar, and you know, the Homunculus Covens constructs are more than just, you know, them taking other Eldari and making horrible machines out of them. Like, they actually experiment with all kinds of stuff, don't they?
Yeah, they don't discriminate. If it suffers, it can be a useful tool. And just for a little like behind the scenes action here, I don't know if you guys usually don't do this, but you know, hey, I'm here and my squirrel's on fire. You guys weren't going to have me do the hobby progress thing, but I'm just doing this to make Carl mad because I make fun of, or I give him a hard time about that segment being long. So I thought I'd come on here so he can give it back to me. So that's fine.
That's nice. That's nice. You're kind of like Jesus.
That's
of?
Okay.
I don't know.
That's okay. Carl hasn't gotten your last name incredibly weird, so.
Well, it comes with the territory of having a super easy 2-syllable white name, but so the conversion that you were talking about, it is not mine at all. Like I every time, like when I post it on Instagram or anything like that, I keep tagging Miles from Little Legend Studio, because I mean, years ago he did this cool conversion for a Talos where he took the tail from the sort of taller tail from the Canoptic Wraiths in the Necron line and had that going into a Talos body, and he repositioned the arms to where they were coming out of the hips, and then he took an old metal homunculus and just like put him in where, and he named it after a short story like The Helmet of Horror. And he took that, and I was like, oh man, I've been wanting to do one of those for so long. Something like that, because I love paint engines. I have a ton of them. We'll get into this later when we get into like Drukhari and campaigns and things, but the coven that I run came from the 5th edition book. There was a symbol for it with like a tiny bit of background, but it was just there. And the Ebon Sting it's kind of like a circle with like this little squiggly kind of sting looking thing in it, and a few slashes connecting the two circles. And I chose them simply because the symbol looked cool. There were no transfers for it, and I figured I could, because they didn't have any special rules or characters, I could do whatever I wanted with them. And I was like, let's be realistic. I can freehand that, you know, because I just took like a washer, you know, double-sided tape onto my little circle thing, drew around it, and then just, you know, because I suck at freehand really bad. And I did that. But they have, now in the last codex, they actually expanded on their background more, and in like the Coven supplement. And this, I'm a Dreadnought guy, and a paint engine is just a Dark Eldar Dreadnought as far as I'm concerned. They're supposed to be like master artisans of paint engines. And so I was like, hey, match made in heaven. So I figured, now that I'm going back and redoing all of my Drukhari stuff, just like going back and doing touch-ups and adding new things and updating weapon loadouts and new bases and everything, I thought, well, wait a minute, why don't I actually like spend some time converting these paint engines and doing it? So I took Miles' idea again, Little Legend Studio, check out the original. It's better than mine. But I ordered a set of those. You can get those Necrons pretty cheap on eBay because they came in the Forge Bane box set, I want to say.
Yeah.
So I got them like new off the sprue for like, I think it was like $27. And I'm going to use the other parts for a different project. But I just used the tails, and I thought, well, why not expand on that? So instead of a helmet of horror, this thing being a torture thing, a Kronos is supposed to actually absorb pain and send it out in useful ways. And I was like, wouldn't a homunculus look at that thing and go, what if I wore it as a hat and just mainline pain, just straight? Like, it's not a punishment, it's a freaking reward. You know, and I thought, well, why not do like a trio of them, since I have the 3 tails and I could put, his acolyte Rax, piloting the other 2, as a reward type of a thing. And it just makes it just helps to set them apart more from the Talos units. And yeah, so I did that, and I used like the little tentacle things that normally go off of the back of Kronos and put those into the hip pod, so it kind of has this kind of very Cthulhu tentacles everywhere sort of thing. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. I've kind of fallen in love with the army all over again, and so this thing is just really, it's just fun to go back and do it with conversions, because in 5th edition, the new models were out and they were so sexy that you didn't need to do anything to them. And now they've been out for a while, and I'm like, I'm getting ideas.
Yeah, I want to set my army apart a little bit. Yeah, I totally get that. Their tentacles are great. There's somebody who did a Chaos army. I don't know, Jason, if you remember who they are. They showed up at our store once, and this guy did basically the Matrix monsters. Mechanicus? Yeah, it was like a Dark Mechanicus, and he basically did...
It was Rob Pettis? No, that wasn't Pettis. His name was Robert. I remember him, though. I have I have some pictures of him because of his stuff, because he showed up and I played him first in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah. Some incredible stuff.
The Tentacle Maker company is really great for some hoses and cables if you want.
Yeah,
and also the demon engines. You don't always make, like, there's 2 different demon engines, like the newer demon engine kit. You don't make, it makes two demon engines, so you're probably going to have leftover tentacles from that. I've used those mechanical tentacles for so many things as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's great, Brian. Thanks for enlightening us on that one. Hey, Jason, what have you been up to recently with your hobby progress and games played?
Well, not a lot.
Oh, what are you kidding me? You know what? Okay, our last episode was September 8th. And we said, you know what, guys? We're going to make sure to have another episode in September because we didn't do one in August. What's today's date? I don't know. It's almost like we're busy or something.
Yeah. For those of you who are depending on which my accounts you're friends with on Facebook, I've got like some kind of large projects at work, like creating new degrees. And stuff.
Entire degrees. Yeah,
and it's been the last couple of weeks have been they've been fun. There we go. They've been interesting times.
That just sounds like bureaucratic hell, having to go through all the channels and committees and subcommittees to approve a new degree. Like, just working in education, I can't even imagine what that looks like at the university level. It just has to be I don't want to imagine it.
I can't even imagine getting one syllabus approved, let alone.
Ugh.
So I know how to do it now, but it's just like anyway, that's not important. What is important? I did build and magnetize a Castellan Knight. I haven't painted it yet, but I got it magnetized, which I'm really stoked about. I managed to get it built, which was amazing. I also built Shrike.
Sweet.
So,
cool.
I did not put the emo head on him. So,
that's the default.
I've been kind of rudely. Have you seen my comments online?
I don't paint skin.
I get it.
You can paint white, right?
Yeah.
Just make him pale and edgy and brooding. That head is like the defining feature of that guy. It's like emo edgelord, like standing in the corner, like making sure everybody knows that, I'm too dark to be here, but I'm not.
When he dances, he only moves. How can he dance? How can he dance if he can't move his head? That's the only thing that moves when he dances is his head.
Yeah, there you go.
He has to bop his head back and forth.
I like Zone Mortalis, and I'm not going to allow him to die to, no oxygen. So
that's true, because the Raven Guard, that gland or whatever, is actually damaged.
Yeah,
like they can't. They actually can't breathe. They can't maintain themselves without oxygen.
Man, I don't want to poop on your guy's dreams or anything, but he's wearing a respirator, Jason.
Oh, snap!
That's right, he is, isn't he? Well,
you're out of excuses.
You guys are like, mental note, last time Brian comes on the show. You don't want to mess with the guy who does all the audio editing. I'm going to sound like a freaking Smurf on helium when you get done with this thing.
Oh, yeah, I've got a couple of good plugins that'll do that.
Yeah.
I've got some incredible ones. Yeah, they're even on this machine too. Okay, sorry, just thoughts. Anyway, but yeah, I've been working on work stuff and haven't had a lot of time to hobby. But during the games played, I was able to finish Blackstone Fortress.
That's so awesome.
The base set with our local gaming group. Let's see. I guess we're talking about Drukhari today, so I can actually talk to you. Like Urgles are part of their business, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those things are bastards.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
In Blackstone, they're terrible. Like we were, going through and finding out what our random encounters were, and every one of us was like, please don't draw an Urgle. Please don't do that again. Because we almost lost like the entire campaign on one game because they just showed up and just wiped us.
Oh no!
Wow.
I think there was like one guy left who had like some wounds that could actually move, and it was a bad time. And the other
Which
thing is on this
character have you been
campaign-
using, dude?
Huh?
Which character have you been using?
I've been using the Kroot guy.
Sweet. That's cool.
He's fun. When he's inspired, he actually has really good shooting. When he's not inspired, it's kind of annoying, but, gotten lucky a couple of times. During the campaign, if anyone's played, you have, 4 strongholds before you can go to the hidden vault. And somehow we drew like the toughest stronghold, either our first or second one, where we had Obsidious Malix, who's supposed to be the big bad chaos guy.
Sure.
Right.
And we managed to take him out and steal his Thunderhammer, which, that made my little Bloodraven heart so happy. So, to be honest, after, finishing that stronghold so early, the rest of it, it wasn't a walk in the park. It was like, well, this isn't as bad as that other one. There's no Urgles, there's no Obsidious Malix, there's no nightmares coming at us.
Yeah.
So. But I think we're starting the escalation maybe tomorrow? I don't know.
Cool.
I wasn't able to play last week just because of work. So we'll see what happens.
Show that is your work life.
Yeah.
Speaking of shit shows, my life has
I'm not
been
editing
very interesting. Okay, that's fine. Well, hey, you know what? He actually laid a proper turd the other day. I was very proud of him. This is my pride as a father. Like, congratulations, son. You laid a proper turd. Congratulations. But I haven't been able to understand addiction before, and I don't want to make light of it. Okay, I am. But when I see the look on his face when I bring a bottle to him, that has got to be what a heroin addict, like the look on their face when they see the heroin coming, because like his mouth opens wide and his eyes are like dinner plates and he reaches out for it like, give it to me. I'm very proud. I'm very proud. Anyways, it's doing good. I also painted 3 Ermagirds.
Yeah.
I painted I have a feeling they're kind of different. So last time I was talking about how great using the Lamian medium as a dull coat it's actually not that great. I've been using it a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, this isn't actually great because it kind of pulls together into these ropes almost of like, so like you get parts of the model that are somewhat shiny and parts that are dull, and it looks almost marbleized, but not in a good way. So I had to kind of fix it on those, and I'm looking at my Drukhari, and I'm like, yeah, the same kind of thing is going on the vehicles for my Drukhari, and I might have to, I'm going to try to fix it, but I may just do like another layer of red and black over those and just spray it again. But no more for characters and stuff. I think it's still fine, but I'm gonna have to stop doing that on the vehicles. It was nice though being able to spray it through the damn airbrush instead of having to go downstairs and spray it out of a rattle can and pray that the weather doesn't ruin my model.
Do you use? I mean, you have an airbrush, so do you use like just matte varnish through one?
Well, that's what I thought the Lamian medium was.
No.
What should I?
Sorry,
what should I use?
The paint. I'm not. I don't even consider myself a painting snob. It's just they sell it as that, and it really isn't. I use it all the time. Like, I'm a fan of it. You know, like I still like when they announced that the glaze paints were going away, like the Guilliman blue. That is the secret sauce for my turquoise blue Craft World Eldar thing. I went to every store. I went to 3 stores and bought them out. So, I mean, I have like 15 of those things. I will never run out. Like in 2045, I'm going to be like sitting there, the crotchety old man, telling everybody about how great Guilliman blue is and how I have, 15 of these left. But, it's good for thinning those things. But yeah, as far as just like getting a matte effect, like just get almost any like airbrush matte will work infinitely better. And you just have more control of it because you aren't, I mean, even with spraying it through, using like Vallejo matte or something like that will just give you like a lot more even result.
My local train shop has Vallejo, so I'll pick up a matte from them the next time I swing by. Yeah. Speaking of my local train shop, I went there and I picked up a bunch of stuff to make trees for Jeff. Jeff gave me a ton of Drukhari models in exchange for trees, basically. I'm going to make him a lot more than trees because he gave me a lot more models than I was expecting him to.
Yeah, he did.
Some of them are a little messed up, like the incubi are... He told me to. They were going to be messed up. So I'm going to use those incubi as crew for the raider that my incubi are on. Yeah, I think, and I'll put the helmeted heads on. I'll swap around helmeted heads and unhelmeted heads with the new guys. So I've been working a lot on the trees. I magnetize them with these 1/2-inch magnets, or no, sorry, quarter inch. Did I do 1/4 inch or 1/2? Well, whatever. I think 1/4 inch magnets with the Magcraft, they're like the only magnets you should get. If you get knockoff magnets from China, you're just inviting disaster. Yes. Like they don't hold well, and also they shatter very easily.
Yep.
They shatter real easy. They mix that with something. Anyways, I magnetized those trees. I made 6 big bases for the trees, and I made 36 green woods and 36 autumn woods, and like 7 bare trees, BARE trees.
Okay.
The magnets are strong enough that I can put them under a fat mat. I can put the bases under a fat mat, and the trees will still magnetize over it. So he does a lot of... Yeah, it's really nice. He does a lot of historical wargaming. So he has one of those actual grass mats. Like it's a mat that's like furry. So putting a base over that seems kind of silly. So... He'll be able to put the bases under his mat, and the trees will look like they're growing out of the grass. So that'll be really cool. Damn. I'm also going to make him some scrub pad hedgerows. You know, have you ever made those?
I haven't, but I can see exactly why you would do it.
Yeah, it's really neat. You cut them into like 1.5-inch tall strips, and you glue them together. You glue like 2 of those 1.5-inch wide strips together, and you go like 6 inches long maybe. And you could add flock if you want. You can, but you do want to paint them because just green looks boring. And you can string them together in long hedgerows. And I'm going to send that off to him as the first shipment. Then my plans are I have some hills already cut out. I'm going to flock those up, and I'm going to send those separately. And then the last one, I'm going to build him some fieldstone walls and some broken foundations, stone foundations, because he can use stone walls and stone foundations in basically any, like, you know, those could be for American Civil War. Those could be for if he's doing like European stuff. It's stone foundations or something that you would see wherever, and stone walls would be wherever.
Right.
So I'm going to do that, but I have to cast all that stone. So I want to make sure he gets his woods soon, because that's what he said very specifically that he needed. But I'll probably send those out after the new year, the stone stuff. I usually make that out of dental plaster. It holds up pretty well, but it's still, all this stuff is still not tournament stuff. You wouldn't want to use trees from the train, like you make from the train store. You wouldn't want to use dental plaster for like tournament abuse. It just doesn't last. That would be for your own personal collection. I wanted to make one note about those trees, though. I've always struggled with making trees, and I have found just the most amazing product. It's called polyfiber. It's basically, like spider web material that you use for decoration. It's kind of like that. It's like the consistency of cotton candy almost. And you stretch it over the tree armature, and you spray it with hairspray and start dipping it in flock. They make it like a green, like a very earthy green color, and you keep doing that. And I actually started also using dull coat spray, which is a little more permanent than hairspray. Yeah. And it covers so well. And it really gives you a nice full tree canopy. I'm really happy with it. So, and it was like $4 for a big bag of this stuff.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice for trees. I strongly recommend that. Again, for your personal collection, not for tournament trees. For tournament trees, I just use pine cones. Or
you guys get pine cones, and that's if they're in my yard. If there's nothing in my yard, exactly. you get to use your imagination, scrubs.
Yeah. Well, what I did with the last group, I painted them purple. So I made them kind of alien trees. Mm-hmm. And it actually looks really fun. Or, go to the Christmas tree shop after Christmas and buy up all the discounted Christmas trees.
Dude, people don't do that enough. I know, right? I finally just so when Kill Team, when they did the Killzone things, right? Like I used to just buy those back when before my second kid, right? Or before I realized I was broke for my second kid. But I bought the jungle one, right? Because I'm like, okay, it has Eldari ruins, and I don't know, I'll do something weird with it. And I ended up using for the leafy sections, ended up doing like the prime black, did like a light gray to, sort of get some shadows, the zenithal. But then I ended up using like a purple, like hexed lichen from Game Color, and then overspraying with an orange, and then dry brushing like really lightly with like a bone color using like makeup sponges. And don't be afraid to play around with that with leaves in 40K, especially, like play around with it, because it just looks so much more interesting than the green, and it doesn't look that out of place with all the other, weird laser swords and flamethrowers and assorted nonsense that we have in this game.
Right, I agree, and that's the cool thing about the science fiction, or even Age of Sigmar. It's all weird stuff and putting nurglings in your trees. Who cares, right? Like,
Sure.
And don't like you say, don't be afraid to paint these materials.
Yeah.
It actually helps a lot. I'm actually thinking about busting out the airbrush and hitting some of these green trees with a lighter green on top, just to give it a little bit of a high zenithal highlight on those trees.
Man, Jason, if you ever make it out here to California, I'm going to have to troll you and put Urgles in the trees.
Yes, Urgles in the trees. Speaking of that, I had a lot of fun playing Blood Bowl with you when we met each other at Carl's for the first time. At Christmas time. That was super nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about that on the way driving into work today to record.
Yeah, it was super fun. Brian's a nice guy, Jason. It's not just a show that he puts on for the listeners.
I always try to tell people I am too
asshole.
stupid to act. I can't chew gum and walk at the same time, so I can't pretend to be something I'm not, because then I would stop using words and the recording would stop.
So again, I have lots of Eldar to paint. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm gonna try to have it done by Christmas. That way, I can submit it for the painting challenge that they're doing over on Splintermind. I did a really big one for August, but I guess that doesn't count or something. I don't know. Anyways,
I don't know. There's some a-hole over there that's power tripping with rules or something. I don't know.
So I did play a bunch of games. I'm working on the Valiant. I don't know. I'm kind of like stuck on what dragon to use for it, and it's all that's left are either joke dragons like the dragon from like Mushu from Mulan, or like dragons that don't. There's no like. You wouldn't be able to tell what they are. Or just look like a regular dragon, like the dragon from Dragon Slayer. It's like, oh, it's just a regular dragon. So I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on that. I don't, because all the other dragons that I have on my knights are iconic.
You already did Falcor, right? From the Neverending Story.
I did. Yeah,
I thought you had.
My Knight Lancer is Falcor.
Yeah.
So I painted. And I did Tiamat. Maybe Bahamut is the way to go. I don't know. Anyways, I did a few games. I did a Maelstrom versus Pat's Death Guard and a Maelstrom versus Pat's Imperial Knight, or his Chaos Knights. He's really excited about the new Chaos Knight book, and he's got a bunch of really cool. Yeah, he's got a bunch of really. He bought the new kit, and he's got a bunch of Nurgle ones from a different company that's been making Chaos Knight parts for a long time. And that was fun. I did a Maelstrom game versus Alexis's Custodes. That's on her channel, the Norn Queen Alexis channel. So Quinn makes an appearance in that one, so that's cool if anybody wants to say hi to Quinn. And I did a Du Bois GT mission versus Curtis's Craftworlders. Mm-hmm. Okay, if anybody is attending Du Bois GT in November, you definitely want to try out those missions because it's a lot of work.
Jeez.
Okay.
So the it's basically the ITC missions. So the score one, hold one, kill one, hold more, kill more.
Sure.
Plus a bonus point. Plus first strike, slay the warlord. What's the one? Marked for death and something else. Oh, like kill the second in command or whatever. And then there's also Maelstrom on top of that.
Oh God.
Using the cards.
This just gives me a headache thinking about it.
I'm just like, we were playing and we're like, are you kidding me? Yeah.
They don't have the secondaries too, do they?
No. But
okay, because I was going to say, yo, dog, I heard you like options. I mean, that's a bit much.
So the Maelstrom, you pick out 6. Like in the recent chapter approved, you can remove 6, and also don't score. You can discard any ones that are impossible. So it behooves you to remove ones from your deck that are possible but not hard, but hard.
Right.
So like And also D3 ones are 2 points. And at the start of the game, you remove 2 and put them out scoreable. So you automatically basically get those 2. So there's a lot to it. I definitely recommend anybody attending the Boys GT download those missions and try them out, because this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I'm not going to lie, about halfway through the description of that thing, I started thinking about, oh man, I think I am going to have to replace the siding when I go to redo those windows in the living room. Like that is a lot.
Yeah.
I apologize if the person running that tournament listens to this show, but man, that's a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is a lot of balls in the air. No, I mean, I always attend to Boys GT. The only reason I'm not this year is because baby stuff. And I'm definitely going to Adepticon, and you have to pick and choose your battles, and so that's where that is. Okay, so we have our union required pee break, and then we're going to come back and start talking about using Drukhari in your campaigns.
Hey Archons, tired of the boring predictability and efficiency of stuff that always works? You need the Slith Party Bus! Got an extra 473 points you can't find a solid use for? You need the Slith Party Bus! You could spend 420 points on 3 reliable Lance Ravagers pumping out 9 Dark Lance shots per turn that'll only give up 3 victory points, or you can drop 473 points on 2 Archons, 8 Slith, and a Raider for 11 victory points. You need the Slith Party Bus! The classic Slith Party Bus. Still awesome. Party Bus! Still hilarious. Party Bus! It's the Slith Party Bus! If you love the Slith Party Bus, you'll want to check out our other exciting products. We have the Rack Wiffle Ball Bat, the Trueborn, and the Blood Bride. Trueborn and Blood Bride models no longer available. The classic Slith Party Bus, still awesome, still hilarious. It's the Slith Party Bus!
Hello everyone. The Masters of the Forge is now a proud member of the NPC, the Narrative Podcast Consortium. Our aim is to inspire your hobby through the rich lore of the 41st millennium. If you enjoy our podcast, then make sure to check out these other awesome shows, where you can get coverage on campaigns, Black Library, and all kinds of general topics of the 40k background.
The NGC 40K podcast also provides in-depth campaign coverage, audio dramas, and free-flowing narrative campaign creation.
The Adeptus Terra podcast also features in-depth discussions of the lore and commentary on the hobby.
Oh, and sexy English voices.
Oh, yeah.
The Masters of the Forge brings the world of 40k to life on your tabletop, with discussion on the lore, backed up by narrative-themed rules and battle reports.
Of course, this is only a fraction of the topics covered by the podcasts of the NPC. Please tune in to find out more.
I just want to invite you to Frayed Paintbrush Hobby Progress Facebook group. It is a positive group set up to motivate us to hobby and then share it with all the other members. At the beginning of the month, post up your monthly challenge on the page, and then at the end of the month, you post the completed work for all to see. No pressure, just fun among friends. Once again, that's Frayed, F-R-A-Y-E-D Paintbrush. Hope to see you there.
Welcome back to episode 131 of Masters of the Forge Drukhari campaigns with Adam, Jason, and Brian. I feel much better. I have coffee. I have water. I have less urine. A funny story, I don't have any. I just ran out of half and half, but I have... There's 8 bottles. There's 8 bottles of freshly expressed breast milk in there, so I'm not sure. It might get weird here. Might get weird.
Wow.
I knew this is where that was going.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You probably don't have to add sweetener. I mean, it's like pre-sweetened.
Adam.
Sorry. Yeah.
I run a dedicated Drukhari podcast, and I'm just shaking my head, going, too much. Too much.
Hey,
I was horrified when you were talking about half and half, because man, I drink coffee like my heart. I want it like my heart, just like black, black and hardened, and just it's
You can't fool me, Brian Harvey. You are the ray of sunshine that warms my soul. So as you guys know, a couple of weeks ago we did participating in campaigns episode, which basically tried to help folks understand how to bring narrative play back into the forefront of their lives.
Yes.
A lot of us seem to be stuck in a 5th edition mindset where Games Workshop thinks we're playing narratively, but we're all playing matched play, and there's a discord. That should no longer be the case, because the Games Workshop has done the smart thing of splitting the ways to play into matched play, narrative play, and open play. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't mix the three. It doesn't mean that we don't play like a conglomeration of the three, as long as we know what we're doing, as long as we're cognizant of how we're playing, then it shouldn't be a problem. But it does still seem to be a problem for people, especially people who feel left behind. Like there's so many rules out there. There's so much match play rules changes, and I can't keep up. I feel like, in my opinion, if you can't keep up, then maybe matched play isn't for you.
It's a little judgy, but you're not wrong.
Right. Like maybe, I mean, I'm not saying don't use points, right? I'm not saying don't use match play rules or don't try to use match, but if you're having trouble keeping up with the meta, then matched play is probably not your thing. Pure match play is probably not your thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to go through these episodes going forward, try to focus on one faction at a time, and try to come up with ways for you to bring the narrative play aspects of that army into your games. And we're going to hook back to that episode when we do this. So like the different ways to do match play and the ways to merge it with your other game types, with all the games that you play, like, at your club or even at a tournament. So let's start. I think I figured the best way to do this would be to first talk about the faction. Now, these could go into crazy detail territory, like the independent characters have been doing with their faction focus episodes, and that's really not what this is about. But I think it is important to talk about the motivations and the methodology of the faction before talking about how to bring that into your narrative play environment. And I like the quote from the Drukhari Codex in the beginning. Like they usually give a thesis statement for the faction. So I'm going to read it out. Everybody, this will be in your hymnal on page, I think, 3. There's a giant. No, page 5 is always a giant picture. It's page 6 of your hymnal. To the sadistic Drukhari, the sweet fruit of horror is as pleasing as the caress of a razored blade across soft flesh. First of all, neither of those things should be pleasing, but okay. Like when you try to compare something to something that also shouldn't be good, like that just tells you something. They relish in breaking the bodies of their captives, but prize even more highly the process of crushing their spirits, for nothing is more gratifying to the denizens of the Dark City than securing utter dominion over those who have resisted them. They drink in every nuance of woe until their captives gibber and plead for death, a mercy the Drukhari are famously slow to grant. So, what do you think, do you think? Is that over the top, Brian?
No.
No. All right,
It's fine.
good.
Here's why it's fine. When you look at every, I've gone through this rant several times with Drukhari, and it's something you really have to bear in mind, is that morality is relative in 40K, of course. The Drukhari are, when you have to understand the fall of the Eldar, Slaanesh, and the relationship with Eldari. They are doing these things they aren't enjoying it because they get their jollies from doing S&M nasty things and torturing and that kind of a thing. They are getting the sustenance they need to not have their souls wither and be consumed by Slaanesh. So they're taking joy in it, but it's like they're starving and you're giving them a steak.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
man,
no, that does.
I hope I'm not like stepping all over anything with that.
I think it was a one of the main GW podcasts where they were talking about motivations of aliens and the motivations of other species and how human morality does not really come into play like a Drukhari supping on the pain and of a mortal soul is no more or less immoral than one of us slaughtering a pig and eating it for our sustenance,
or invading and taking the resources like water from another society. It's something they need to survive. And
exactly.
Maybe they get their jollies off of it a little too hard, but it's the thing that makes them. We'll get into this later, but it's the thing that makes them interesting for campaigns is that their motivations are completely different than other ones, but at the core they're the same. It's all about resources.
Right, exactly. And I thought that was really interesting how they really focused on the horror of aspect of it. Like they want people to know it's not all about just physical torture. It's about domination. It's about totally changing someone's entire outlook on life based on what the Drukhari has done to them. And I think that's really interesting. It's scary. It's super scary. I mean, it might be a little too real for some people, which is totally understandable. Like that's a key aspect of a lot of really bad relationships. Like they're.
And for those that need a safe faction to go to, if that's too much, you have Tau. They're pretty positive.
Oh, sure. This is fine. Actually, I think like Space Marines are the ultimate. I mean, they're all like they're part of an awful regime, but at least it's like I am hero here to save, that kind of unquestioning heroism. Where the Drukhari are a lot more complex, and if you're looking for that complexity in your stories, then the Dark Eldar I think are a great choice, and you can bring that stuff into your games. Maybe your characters are kind of struggling with it a little bit, and it might be they have a whole history, right? Many of these characters are thousands of years old, and they've struggled in the Dark City for eons. Yep. So, there could be hearkening back to the halcyon days of the Eldar, and getting that history into it. And like a lot of Dark Eldar, like when I was reading about it, especially the Homunculus Covens, they do a lot of soul searching, a lot of seeking out of this knowledge. They look for not only other species to torture and add to their collection and graft onto the bodies of their victims, but also knowledge to increase their own capabilities. Is that part of why you do the Homunculus Covens, like that intellectual aspect of them, or they're just rad?
I got into them because, I started playing them in 3rd edition, And at that point, the Homunculus Covens really weren't that well developed. I mean, the only unit that they had aside from the Talos, that was a questionable model even back then. Where their grotesques originally were the models were real bad, but the homunculi I actually liked, and I liked the whole like interesting kind of Hellraiser thing that they had going. I think I got into them not just for the motivations also, but it was because they had really expanded on the line. And it's just, to me, they're just interesting because you really need all three factions to understand. I don't want to say aspects. I mean, this isn't like aspect warriors or anything like that, but there's such a necessary part to it. And I love the fact that everybody hates them.
But they need them.
But you need them. It's that ally that you need, that you are just disgusted by, but you just bite your tongue and just go with it, you know. And that's and also too, just like the very just like fairy tale nature of their technology, you know. Like, I mean, and when the 5th edition codex came out, I remember there was that great round table with like I think it had like Phil Kelly and Jess Goodwin, and they were talking about how their technology is so bizarre that it looks like magic. And that, and they have dreadnoughts, so that sells me. I'm not a complicated man. It doesn't take much to get me happy, and that definitely makes me happy.
That definitely made it into the codex. I was reading it when I was reading it. They were saying, you know, even though the Drukhari do not use magic at all, their technology is such that it is indistinguishable from magic in a lot of ways. Yeah. There is some it's like not only do some of these weapons like separate matter, but they also like tear your soul apart. Like,
yes,
Jesus Christ. So I'm a little confused about something with the Drukhari. I know there are a lot of parallels with Slaanesh, and that's early on when I first started this hobby, I confused the Drukhari with I thought the Drukhari were a Slaaneshi faction, which is literally the opposite. But at the same time, they still they sup on the souls of the damned or whatever. And I was wondering, do they gain any sustenance at all from other experiences, like driving fast or doing dangerous things, like exhilaration in like, you know, physical pursuits or feeding or whatever, or is it just pain and domination?
So this is the whole thing, and this is what I like that they've really fleshed out, because initially 3rd edition they're introduced and it's just like, okay, so in a Rogue Trader we had space dwarves. No, we're going to call them squats now. You know, like they were just the dark elf. Initially they kind of just look like, okay, and that's, I was resistant to them changing the name to Drukhari, you know, but calling them Dark Eldar just makes it sound like, oh, these are the evil elves. And like what I really think you have to emphasize with this is that looking at the relationship with Slaanesh, it's not that there are necessarily parallels with Slaanesh. Slaanesh is formed from the excess and extremes of emotions that Eldari had. And when you look at Drukhari, you really have to realize these aren't the evil ones. These are Eldar at the fall that just have not changed their tune. Like we think
they're OG
Craftworld,
Eldar.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, one of the terms for them is the true kin, and that's why. It's because Craftworld Eldar are really the uptight puritanical offshoots that they're not the default. Like we saw Eldar first. Well, I mean, first we saw mercenaries in Rogue Trader, but you know, in 2nd edition, late Rogue Trader, early 2nd edition, we see Eldar introduced, and like we sort of think that's what Eldar are. Drukhari, those emotions, I don't see those as being the thing that actually fills them up. That's just who they are. They're a race that just is prone to extremes. So for them, that's just not being bored. You know, the speed aspect and all those different things. The suffering is the thing that is filling. Jess Goodwin, in that video that we keep alluding to, when the 5th edition book came out, Jess Goodwin alluded to imagining that their souls are sort of like water in a bucket, and it just keeps leaking, and they just have to keep filling it up. And as they become more powerful, sort of the leak gets a little stronger, so it takes more for them to fill that thing up. So I don't know. I can't think of any examples where that sort of like extreme hedonism helps to fill that void.
Right.
But it is a good question, though, because, I mean, it seems like it, you know, if their souls are being siphoned off by Slaanesh, that would be the thing that, you know, excess would be a thing that would help to fill it up. But I think it's just more fun to make, and it makes them better villains, you know, to just make it the suffering that fills them up. The rest is just for kicks.
Yeah. I often like to use this analogy where the craft worlders are kind of the Mennonites of the Eldar.
Yes, very much.
And the what are they called? They're the ones that ride the dinosaurs. The Exodites are the Amish, basically. Like
yeah, okay.
Of the Eldar. Dinosaur riding Amish, but whatever.
Oh God, if they ever do that faction now, I'm just going to be like, oh my God. I'm just going to picture wagons in the Pennsylvania countryside
So yeah, we talked about Slaanesh, and I think that this comes into one of the more important threads of Eldar or Drukhari motivations. Well, Eldari motivations too, like just in general, of not only trying to destroy Slaanesh, like if you're trying to think of a heroic deed for your Drukhari, like destroying and protecting the Eldari race from Slaanesh is probably your best go-to, in my opinion. But also, it's just survival, against the what seems to be an inevitable end. And they're kind of just like, this is their last party before Slaanesh eventually does take them. Would you say that's a truth?
I don't know that it's, again, the thing with the last party, I mean, I know that they have to put measures in place, right? Like they don't want, I mean, they literally have Cain's Gate in Komorrah, right? And they're always trying to prevent these demonic incursions and things like that. Psychers, they, you know, aren't allowed in the Dark City.
Yes, the only thing you're not, that's banned in the Dark City.
Yeah, they're like, there's one rule, and it's just no psychers. Everything else,
Go for it.
Wherever you got to put it, just do it. It's all fine. But I don't know. It's bizarre. I don't know that I don't know that Drukhari actually look at it as this is the last party, because for them, the fall, other than needing the suffering part, I mean, they were already prone to excess before, clearly, giving birth to the gods. So I don't know that they even view this as this is the last, you know, we're a dying race and this is the last of it. I mean, I think they are still just partying, but now they're like, oh, we can't do that one thing because the neighbors will call the cops and the party will end. And that's about it. Does that make sense? Like, I don't see them viewing it the same way. Like, I feel like the craft world Eldar are definitely more preoccupied and consumed with this whole idea, you know, with their soul stones and things like that. And Drukhari are like, we found a way around that, you know?
Were I younger, I would disagree with you, but having viewed how humans have reacted to the climate crisis, right. I totally believe you.
Yeah.
The Drukhari are just like, you know what?
Absolutely.
This is fine. This is fine.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, that stuff's going on, but I'm not giving up my AC. You know, that's exactly it. That, yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly, yeah.
Even after Yvrain caused this giant demonic incursion that is never ending, and they have to actually send they have to create new pocket realities for the demons to invade, to stop the demons from invading actually Komorrah. They're just like, yeah, you know, it's fine.
Well, they're like,
fine.
They just look at it. They're like, well, I'm not going to stop partying. Are you going to stop partying? Hell no, I'm not stop partying. Okay, well, how can we keep partying? Oh, we'll just make a pocket realm, and then we'll just keep them in there. Sounds good. I'm going to go back to my giant pile of whatever I was just doing. So that's how they roll.
But that brings us to another motivation, and that is protecting the Dark City from demonic incursion. That's pretty much all they're protecting it from, because good luck attacking the Dark City. It is huge and multifaceted, and it's I hesitate to call it even a city. It is a realm unto itself, hanging out in the webway. It is enormous. Think of I think of Coruscant, a really nasty Coruscant. It is a world city that is even more so than the Imperial equivalent. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of Drukhari out there. There are a lot of them. There more than people think there are.
To get weird, and this almost sounded like really snotty. Like I was going to say, well, you're thinking in such terrestrial terms here.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
I muted me slapping myself across the face when I almost said that, but I don't thinking of Coruscant, right? Where you have this planet that's just an entire city and somehow still has an atmosphere because Star Wars physics.
Yeah.
You also have to take into account all the little like satellite realms and things like that. I mean, you have, dimensions within dimensions and so it really is the entirety. I mean, it's called the Dark City, and you think of it as a city or, a planet-wide thing. You really have to think of it rather than just being confined to a single area as just all of these it's kind of like the internet, right? Where it's just everything connected through technology, only it looks like magic, if that makes sense. So I think it's good that we don't understand it.
Right. When you see pictures of it, it reminds me a lot of some of the art that they've done for the Mortal Realms, where it's more of a realm than a city or a planet.
Yeah.
Well, it also reminds me a little bit of the old Flash Gordon movie, like from the 70s, where there's like realms. Which, man, we brought up Flash Gordon. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. He'll save every one of us.
But that's kind of what as we're talking about, that's what it kind of reminds me of. Just looking for
definitely.
Hawkmen next.
Well, there are Hawkmen.
Well, there we go.
I have some upstairs.
Funny you should ask.
We've got that for you. So that's one of that's another noble motivation. I want you actually touched on that already. Like there's satellite realms. There are other cities, much smaller. In fact, the new campaign, the Phoenix Rising campaign, brings up one of the realms that the Incubi live in and Drazar lives in that was abandoned a long time ago. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun environments that you can explore in your games and in your stories that these books are starting to bring up and expanding on the old lore and advancing the old lore, and it's a beautiful time to be a 40K player. Another motivation that comes from that is the power and status of Drukhari society itself. The Drukhari are always kind of scraping for power, and I think it only makes sense. One could see it as a detriment to survival, trying to constantly fight for supremacy. But when you think about how the Drukhari, their entire being is the domination of others and the and that sort of thing, this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a psychological disorder that makes you care only about yourself.
Narcissism?
Like this super narcissism, right? That they experience. Like, it only makes sense that from a societal standpoint, it's all about dominating other Drukhari, and becoming, getting this power and status. And there's also a safety in that. Like, there's danger to that, obviously, but when you can fake your own death and kill everyone who's rejoicing in your death, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a great way to live, right?
Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that?
Well, but I think also, too, in looking at how their society is set up, it's just like domination with any other thing. I mean, we look at it for, power for the sake of power, and there is an element of that. I mean, if you think of, domination gives like a certain sense of satisfaction to certain personality types. And if Eldari are anything, they certainly are narcissistic. They are very much me people, but it's also, power also gives you access to resources. And if your resource is you need the best, if you're able to dominate other households as a cabal or something like that, you aren't worried about putting your resources into defending yourself as much. I mean, your own reputation can be a thing that prevents people from trying to attack or overthrow you. But also in having in access to these great resources, you get choice raids and things like that, where you're going to bring in status. Your followers are going to get to experience even greater levels of suffering. If you have more resources, you can put on better gladiatorial games. So the witches, you keep the population from getting stirred up and these types of things. So it's the same motivation that any race in this game has, is that it is an issue of resources, and that control that they have over society is all about. It's the same thing. It looks different, but it's the same thing. You're trying to secure resources, and it's what they're doing.
That's a really good point. If you're running a campaign, if you're running your own personal narrative in your group, and if you have another Drukhari player in your group, it might be fun.
Those are the best games.
Right?
God, those are the best games.
It might be fun to just be like, okay, let's keep let's keep a status rating amongst ourselves to see which one of us has the most power in the Dark City, and we can kind of do fun things. You could probably do fun things with that throughout, your career as a wargamer.
Yes.
So yeah, have we missed any Drukhari motivations in your opinion there, Brian? I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's just, like I said, because even, again, if you have two cabals that are like duking it out with each other, they're fighting over status, right? And status is a resource in this city, right? Reputation, like people don't want to mess with Vect because he's proven enough times that he will handle business in a very, very vicious way. Yeah. And so that status allows him to help keep control and also have the best pick of resources.
Absolutely. And in a way, it protects you from your own people, too. Actually, yes. I think that's the most important thing, probably. So let's go into methodology. This gets into kind of the gears of the game a little bit. It's a very light... I have a very light in notes in our notes section because I feel like we can just talk about this easily. So first of all, it's our glass cannon type army. Glass cannon faction where maneuverability and firepower over defense. Now, the Homunculus Covens might disagree to a certain degree, but the Drukhari in general are a hit and fade type faction.
Very much.
I don't think I'm wrong. Like, they use light vehicles that again, we can bring up the wonderful film Flash Gordon again, like this, or like the.
Which, by the way, I've never watched. That's why I'm laughing through this whole thing. Is like I know of like short clips and things like that, and man, none of them make me want to watch the movie.
Yeah,
it's a terrible
they
movie.
have venoms. There are venoms in that movie.
I wouldn't have quoted if it was a good movie. That wouldn't have happened. So yeah.
Right.
We used to play Warhammer tournaments at a store in like the middle of the Adirondacks in New York. And there was a townie bar. There's a townie bar next door. So in between rounds, we would go into the townie bar, get really inexpensive drinks, get trashed, and play the Flash Gordon theme song on their jukebox.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And the townies were so mad. And we would sing drunk, just singing Flash, and then go back and play another game. It was good times.
I remember that they shut that thing off actually one time we were there.
Yeah. Now, when you're playing there, do they make you sit? I'm assuming that's where the horrible chairs come from, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
a
know
good
what
time.
an Adirondack was before I got married, and my wife's mother's family is from the East Coast, and they're like, "Oh, it's an Adirondack." I'm like, "Oh, that's what you call those horrible chairs." Okay.
Oh yeah, I like sitting in those. It's fine. You can. That's not rude at all, Brian. Denigrating my chair. No, I don't know. They are hard to
Hey,
get
if you
out
don't
of.
like it, anybody can come to California and fight me on it. I'm telling you, it's not a comfortable chair, but
What's the California chair? The California chair is the it's an author they named the chair out from. Oh, they're always talking about it on NPR. Arthur Miller chair, the Arthur Miller chair. That's the California chair.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, or I was gonna say like just sitting in a pool of your own like hippie stink and
I'm doing that right
sense
now.
of self-importance. That's what we sit on out here.
I put on deodorant, but my back hair is doused in sweat. It is not great. It is not great. Okay, well, so hit and fade attacks, that's like definitely a methodology that they use. Fear. They hijack communications prior to an attack. They use grizzly trophies on their transports to scare people. Do they do anything else? Like I know the Imperium sometimes like projects audio across the battlefield, and sometimes I don't know if they do anything else fear wise. Oh, like don't they have grenades that shoot gases or something?
Torment launchers. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, their vehicles can have it too now. They finally brought that back. Because in 3rd edition, they had, in the 3.5 codex or whatever, when they added war gear, they added horror fexes, which were like grenade launchers that would launch those torment things. And, oh, yeah, those things I love those things. They're just from a fluff perspective. They're not that great in the game, but they are fun.
Yeah, I can imagine like starting to hallucinate during an attack. Like that doesn't sound great. I just read Spear of the Emperor, and there's an assassination. I probably shouldn't read that. Talk about that. Anyways, hallucinogenic gas is not great. Anarchy, confusion. Like they use these vox ghosts that make you think things are happening that aren't happening. Like a very small contingent of Drukhari can cause a lot of confusion and fear just by how they attack, and like their technology is so strange and so otherworldly that it's hard to defend against it. They also
all this springs out of the fact that when they're fighting for resources, land isn't one of them. Territory isn't one of them. So their mobile warfare is based on the fact that they don't need to defend. They're never defending anything. Perhaps if something encroaches on something that interferes with their resources, their defense is to have a quick and swift lightning offense, because they don't want to spend a bunch of time in real space, because that's where the whole withering thing happens, versus in Gamora, where time apparently just doesn't age them, so they're able to just keep the party going with that. And so all of their intimidation and fear tactics are really all about, it's just you're seasoning your food, right? They get sustenance from fear and suffering and all these things. So creating even more terror. It's not just about, tipping the odds in your favor so that your attacks can land better and those types of things. It's also about generating a heightened sense of fear, and so that the suffering is that much greater for them to take in. So it's really, they're just putting seasoning on their meats, all they're doing when they do that stuff.
Yeah, I can see like these kind of raids being long plans, like long cons, right? Like you start by just sending ghost like vox clicks to the world, like just every once in a while, just in the vox, and maybe it starts spelling out something, and the planetary leaders try to figure out what it is, and they can't block it, and then it turns into like static and whispers and maybe noises and sounds, screams and weeping, and like it eventually becomes this thing that causes them to shut off all communications, right? And now nobody knows where the attack is coming from or where it's going to be, and the whole population is terrified before the Drukhari even show up. And that's awesome to think about. And just keep that in mind when you're developing your stories. Like that kind of seasoning of the meat is gonna add a lot of flavor to your stories.
Yeah, they are not heeding the Surgeon General's warnings on sodium intake. They are just just
pour it on. The Drukhari also use poison a lot in their because the point is, a lot of the time when the Drukhari are fighting you, and if you're playing games, I wouldn't actually think of your characters as your models as being dead, because they're probably not. Your models are probably incapacitated, on the ground, unable to move. They're not dead. They're probably very much alive in ways that they wish they weren't. Yeah, I don't think they're resting. I think that they are more alive than they've ever been, and they have these poisons coursing through their veins that's causing them unimaginable pain. And just keep that also in mind as you're playing through your narrative games. Especially when it comes to characters and stuff. Like if you're trying to think, oh, my character died, like what do I do? Like, well, your character's probably not dead. Your character's probably just fine? ? Are a lot of even the ranged weapons are poisoned in this, aren't they, Brian?
Oh yes. Yeah. There's poison everywhere, and it's glorious.
Yeah, splinter weapons themselves, like they just like set your nerves on fire. Like you feel like you're coming apart at the seams when you're hit by a splinter weapon or something.
Man, with my recent piriformis thing that's like destroying my sciatic nerve in my left leg, like I have a much greater appreciation for it, and I'm just like, I almost feel bad doing it now in a game, but it's nerve pain is real.
So what do you think about methodology, Brian? Did we miss anything?
No, I think that's really it. And again, like, God, I'm sitting in my classroom while we're recording this, and I tend to sound like an econ teacher because, hey, I am. It really is about resources, and like you were saying, like the poison thing, the fact that they use poison and all these different things the motivations can look weird. Because it might look like, well, why are they attacking this thing? Like the narrative might be hard to write. But the beauty is, it's kind of like with any 40K physics question or timeline question, you can say, yeah, but the warp, that's just like an answer for everything.
Yeah.
Their poison could be an answer for the methodology and why they're attacking a particular imperial outpost or something like that, right?
Or Tyranids, right? Like, we want to get the poison from this specific Tyranid. Everybody's going to die, but the Archon really wants this poison so he can start to manufacture it, have the Covens manufacture it for him.
Well, and they talk about some of the Coven supplements and things like that they distill like an entire population of a world for like a single drop to make this like particular poison that they need for some special purpose. And so, their methodology, I mean, their objectives, when you go to set up objectives and things like that, they might look weird and bizarre, but you can just fill it in with, instead of, like I said, the imperial answer for everything is just when you can't answer it is the warp. You can just, throw in that they need one of these like mystery ingredients, to make a thing. So they're just, if you guys can tell, I kind of like this army. They're fun. they party in a way that amuses me. I'll just put it that way.
Well, and they're not one dimensional. The way Games Workshop has expanded on the faction, like, it was up to us before to try to add flavor and try to add a little bit of variation in our factions. Mm-hmm. Pardon me, sorry. Now Games Workshop has helped us with that, and now we have a lot of these sub factions that we're using that are people got very excited about the chapter tactics and stuff as 5th edition showed, and Games Workshop has expanded on that, given people what they want, and that's and that is to give people the ability to have their own special snowflakes, and I have no problem with that. I want to just rapid fire some of these faction specific motivations and methodologies. You can stop me.
Well, Adam, I was going to say before we get started, I do want to point out a thing, and this is just a very Dark Eldar specific thing. When they came out with these obsession things, I do want to point out that there were competitive players that were very upset by the faction splitting, because it is unique in that we have an army that I can't think of another one where there's a codex where you basically have 3 different armies. You can play them as, you can take a list that just takes, whatever units you want that fill particular slots, but you lose the obsessions. And so there were a lot of competitive players that get really salty. In fact, there's one guy who's like super persistent. The guy's a jerk. I'll just throw that out. It's easy. But he was like on our Facebook page for Splintermind was like demanding that I answer if, it was playtesters' ideas or Games Workshop's ideas for the obsession system, because it's
you're not allowed
impossible to make an army. And it's like, it's really not
impossible.
I mean, with the triple detachment system, if you can't make an army with this codex, I don't know what you're doing, because it is fun and flexible, and it works, and it works from a background perspective really well.
It does, and I have strong opinions that I will definitely give in a moment when we talk about building narrative armies, because I'm with you.
Sweet.
I have strong
opinions. Bring the heat, sir. I love it.
But we have a lot of motivations and stuff and methodologies that are very specific to certain cabals, cults, and I guess I could just say obsessions for the whole deal. Cabal of the Black Heart, they want to maintain the status quo and usurp one another. Like if you want to do an internal Drukhari campaign, the Black Heart is a great way to do that. Cabal of the Flayed Skull, they do airborne attacks and shocking raids. Which again, that's a generic Dark Eldar thing, but these folks really, their feet don't touch the ground unless they're coming in for the killing blow.
Yeah, Flayed Skull takes it to 11.
Yeah,
and anybody who checks out Splintermind, like Alex and I, will gush endlessly about Flayed Skull. It is my favorite to play.
Cabal of the Poison Tongue, they sow discord and win the day through duplicity and subterfuge and intelligence. That's really cool. They are super poisoners, obviously, but it's not about just the poison. They poison your society. Cabal of the Obsidian Rose. They build an experiment with ever more ingenious implements of pain and death. So they're nerds. They're space elf, dark space elf nerds. Cabal of the Last Hatred. They walk the line between life and death. These guys are gross, by the way. They are the ones. If you read Azerman, I think this is the cabal that Azerman deals with on his old Maiden World. They walk the line between life and death. They experiment with creating works of art of their still living victims. So like they are the Kingdom Death cabal. They're really gross. Cabal of the Dying Sun, they are mostly trueborn, or they're all trueborn. Like that's their thing. They only attack at sunset for philosophical reasons. I love those guys. The Lords of the Iron Thorn.
It's how they get their kicks. They like being edgy.
The Lords of the Iron Thorn, they're spacefarers and shipbuilders, and they're trying to stay in the good graces of the Blackheart after an unfortunate coup attempt. Cabal of the Broken Sigil, they sow chaos, especially among any orderly or happy populations. Literally no one likes them. Like, if anything's going well, they want to stop that. They're dicks. Going into the cults, Cult of Strife. They're master the art of killing and gather a host of adoring fans. They really like. They're super into people going to watch them as they fight in the arenas, and they're really close to the Black Heart. Cult of the Cursed Blade. They use their unsuspecting allies to do their dirty work for them. And then they kill them when the spoils would be divided. The Cult of the Red Grief, they're airborne raiders, and they participate in a lot of the gang wars as a method of training for the real thing. So they like to fly around on their hoverboards and do cool stuff. The Cult of the Seventh Woe, they like experiences in sadism. Cult of the Blade Denied, they use improvised weapons and use their enemy's strengths against them. Cult of the Wrath Unbound. These guys are awesome. They use blind berserk combat through the use of the killing trance. Cult of the Pain Eternal. Totally spacefaring cult who revel in destroying faiths of the galaxy with the end goal of extinguishing hope in a population. So they'll make you stop believing in the Emperor's grace and then kill you. Prophets of the Flesh. They don't waste their time with the mundane. Oh, yeah, these are the Homunculus Covens. So Prophets of the Flesh, they don't waste their time with the mundane. They are in search of understanding beings such as the Tyranids and Primaris Marines. Like, they've already done all... These guys are done with the foundational research. They're getting into the weird crap now. The Dark Creed. Am I wrong in that, Brian? Like, you are
absolutely
next
right.
level.
You're
they're
absolutely
next
right.
echelon. The Dark Creed, they're into the art of fear and sending their prey into blind panic before finishing them off. The Coven of the 12, they're into these brash and brutal attacks. Like, they get into it. They do their own dirty work. They don't allow their foe to take the initiative, and they're constantly experimenting in order to stay on top. The Black Descent are trap makers who prefer their creations to weaken their prey before they move in for the kill, preferring foes who think too much of themselves. Then the Hex, the last one in the book, they send forth hordes of ingenious creations in order to create and collect more creations, cursing their victims with terrible deformations, including the poor black dragons. Oh, the black dragons can't catch a break, can they?
Nope.
So
Not at all.
That was a lot, but I just wanted to rattle that off to kind of prove a point. There's a lot of nuance to each of these sub-factions, and you are welcome to come up with your own, especially with some of the new rules from Phoenix Rising, which we're going to talk about.
Oh, yes.
So just like our, I forgot what episode it was, but we went through some of the sub-factions and tried to match. Oh, yeah, it was the Space Marine one. We'll go through and we'll try to match some of these, the new obsessions with some of these sub-factions. So that'll be super fun when we get to that.
Absolutely.
So for campaigns, I want to talk about objectives. So using these motivations and methodologies to coalesce into salient objectives that you can use in your narrative games. So one thing that jumps out are slaves, souls, and bodies, which folks have used people as objectives before. Mm-hmm. It can be difficult because people are easy to kill, right? People are easy to. It's not an easy objective because it can end up being moot after turn one. I think I kind of recommend using like kind of lookout sir type tactics for your people objectives. If you really need to protect slaves for your Archon, perhaps the Drukhari will they'll throw themselves in front of fire for this, depending on how yummy the slave is. Like, there might be a slave so yummy that your Archon orders you to gather them at all costs. How does that even work, Brian? Like I can't imagine a witch or a Kabbalite warrior who, I guess at the end they're so afraid of their Archon that they're willing to sacrifice themselves for this cause. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around.
Well, but you got to remember, I mean, with the wacky technology that Covens have, I mean, all they need is like a toenail and they can regrow you, you know,
Yeah,
and when
that's
you're
true.
reborn, it's not just that you're afraid of your Archon. It's also the potential reward you have for doing these things. So if you are willing to literally take a bullet or a, you know, macro cannon shell or whatever 40K awful weapon it is for your Archon and achieving one of their goals, you're demonstrating loyalty as much as you can be loyal in Kimura, but you're demonstrating that, and your hope is on the other side that you will be, you know, regrown from a toenail or whatever's left over and rewarded on the other side of it. So again, it's all about access to choice suffering.
Okay, so I guess for slave objectives, you could use you could definitely say treat those slaves as characters where you can't target them unless they're the closest. Also, you could just use them as an objective. So, like in the past, we've had just these like cards that we put on the table where it just represents. I drew like a picture of a crowd, or you could actually print out a picture of like a crowd of zombies or whatever. Where we had the zombie objectives before. So just like these outlines of just a bunch of people that you're protecting on the battlefield. Or you can use D&D miniatures that you have lying around that just represent these slaves that you're corralling. You can also put them in transports. That also might not be a terrible idea. Just have a raider or something. Maybe that's too fast, like a ground transport or something where you can use that transport as a way of moving the slaves or the torture victims around and getting them off the battlefield.
Sure. But see, I think you can also, another thing you can use, because again, this is going into their motivation and how they do, is you could generate some sort of a system. I mean, it would depend on what the defender's conditions would be. As far as matching it up, but you could use, like, a very Dark Eldar thing would be to use models lost to battle shock, you know, keeping some sort of a tracker on that, because you're losing them to fear, right? And leadership and discord and discipline breaking down, is using some sort of a chart where for every, you know, because they have a lot of tools to modify leadership. I mean, it's not the thing that it used to be in the last edition with, like, they called the build the freak show build. We
don't need to just use people as objectives. We can also use like big monsters. So if you're playing against a big monster like a Tyrannid or something like that, you drop an objective down whenever a big monster's killed to get its poison, like, or Death Leaper. Like if you kill Death Leaper, man, that poison's worth a lot of dough.
Well, how about this too? So in the lore, they had a thing where when the poor Tau run into Prophets of the Flesh for the first time, they get this grainy video image of this face that looks kind of messed up, but they're like, I don't know, they're here to help us, you know, and it's Urian Rakarth, right? And he wants them to send over some envoys, you know, just, you know, as for a peaceful exchange and this sort of a thing. They never give them back, and then when they're fighting later, they're like horrified by the way they fight and what they look like and all these things. And they notice that some of them kind of have a bluish tint to their skin, and they put two and two together and go, oh, snap, right? So they can turn anything into grotesque. Their own people, other races, the pain engines too, when you look, are just organic things that have just been given, you know, macro steroids and whatever, you know, awful stuff. So I would say also you could, not just monsters, if you played against units like Astra Militarum with Ogrins, right? Multi-wound units, models with multi-wound models in it. Like if you destroy that one, you can create that to use as an objective too.
Right. I could see like a whole campaign being fought like to capture as many different species as possible to use in your experiments. Like I could see someone using that as a personal like we'll talk about personal campaigns later, but like actually like checking off on a list like all the things they've killed because they haven't killed it. They've captured it for experimentation. So yeah, that would also, big monsters and stuff would also, or at least unique monsters would be a good one for Drukhari versus Drukhari, because you both want the right to use that DNA.
Right.
Would you say that it's possible for a Drukhari to capture a demon as an objective and use that, like capture one of those and torture? Actually, try to at least make a good college try at torturing a demon.
I say where there's a will, there's a way. Not only that, so I mean, there is the whole thing where it's like, well, wait, demons fade in and out of reality and these kinds of things, and they don't have magic, but they have technology that's bizarre enough that so bizarre that it looks like magic. And I think they'd be able to do it. You know what I mean? If humans can bind a demon into a machine, right? I mean, just because you do it in the eye of terror doesn't mean that there isn't like a physical process to it, because otherwise it would just undo itself in reality. And I would think that the Covens would find a way to do it, because that's the kind of thing that you could obsess over for 10, 20,000 years and figure out a way to do it. So I could absolutely see Covens doing that. And man, you want to talk about the level of suffering it would take for like a demon of Slaanesh to actually feel pain, and just I would think that would be a very delicious thing for them.
I think you'd have to think outside the box, right? Like I think for a Slaaneshi demon, for example, like if you could run a whole campaign based on this, like you start off by maybe assaulting an Imperial, maybe a black ship. Maybe you do a lightning raid against a black ship because you want to capture a sensory deprivation tank of some kind.
Yeah,
like a really
there you
powerful
go.
sensory deprivation tank. You steal that from the Imperials, then you go after the Slaaneshi demons, and you capture like, I don't know, like a herald or even the mask itself or something like that.
Sure.
If you manage to capture it, you stuff it in a sensory deprivation tank and lock it, and you just siphon off the absolute horror of that demon as it senses literally nothing.
Man, Adam, I'm kind of afraid of you in a good way. I'm glad there's like, about 3,000 miles of continent and plenty of, square states separating us to, yeah. Well played, sir. Well played.
So another good way of representing objectives on the battlefield, I think, is information. So we have things like, you have like terminals where you have to access data. This is an old trope, but it's also something you can use for other than territory, because as we said before, Drukhari really aren't interested in your land, but objectives on the battlefield don't always just represent territory that needs to be taken. So let's move on from can you think of any other, can you guys think of any other kind of objectives that you'd use for a Drukhari scenario? Other than slaves, information, gear, like poison bodies, etc. Like, am I missing anything?
Leaders' heads on a pole. I think you pretty well covered it there, sir.
All right, cool. So let's talk about personal campaigns and secret missions. Now, one thing that we've talked about in the previous episode was the fact that you're not always going to be playing narrative play, but you kind of still want to advance the story of your army. So when you're doing a match play tournament, or you're at like club night or something, you're doing your match play games, and you want to still have somewhat of a story going on. These are the timeline stories that are in the codex, right? Like little blurbs of things that happened in your army's history. So what I was thinking with the Drukhari is that you can always run away, right? Like you're faster than them. You're faster than your enemy. So at some point you could say, okay, my goal is to do X. And after that, I'm just going to run away. Of course, you keep playing your game. You finish the game with the person you're playing with.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but in your mind, your army has retreated with having completed whatever goal you set. Maybe it's killing the enemy commander or, holding a certain objective for a certain period of time to gather some kind of information. But in reality, you don't want to be like, well, my objective's complete. F you, I'm booking out. But in your story, you can say that you've done that. And I think that's really I think that's true for a lot of different scenarios. You're gonna fight to the death, but your Drukhari army probably wouldn't fight to the death for every single thing, especially if your warlord's involved or whatever. What do you think of that, Brian? Especially at tournaments and stuff where, you don't want to you can't play a narrative scenario, right? So you got to eke some kind of substance out of it. I know that you guys talked about this in your narrative, you had a couple episodes about narrative play. You were talking about, how you guys prefer to just build, you build narrative lists and you have narratively built armies, but you still, you're mostly still doing just matched play games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, I could definitely see it working that way. I mean, because we also haven't. Part of that has just been that the regular group that I play with, our playing time has been kind of disrupted a little bit, and we don't have like a central store that we play at because the one store in our area doesn't support tabletop gaming. I mean, they sell it, but it's Magic or get out kind of a thing. So I do see that as a good way to do it because, yeah, I mean, if you tell somebody like, oh, well, I've achieved my secret objective, I'm leaving now, and they're like, we're playing a game, you can still, like you mentioned, you can still get that dual use out of it, of having a mission, where you're driving the narrative of your army forward a little bit, but you don't have to sit there and go, well, oh God, I thought of a great analogy to use, but not on you're a family friendly show. You've got yours and you're done. Like you need to be, you're there for a shared experience. You need to play it through. But I could see that, I've achieved it. I'm good to go. And I hadn't considered doing that before. And it's actually pretty good.
Right. Just like, okay, for the sake of the game, we're going to keep playing. But my army is technically running away right now as far as the story is concerned.
Right.
And I think that's true for Club Night too. But, as always, as we said in that other episode, just try to find those kindred spirits in your club. People who are willing to hit the brakes on the matched play side of things, even if, they still are very much against power level. That's fine. If you're getting together with someone and for a planned narrative play experience, having a list prepared is probably something you actually are going to do anyways. I think power levels best used in open play where you have no idea who you're playing and it's just a friendly game anyways. In narrative play, it's you're going to have a list prepared and you're actually probably going to talk to your opponent about what list you're bringing, right, and stuff like that. So it's not a big deal to bring a points list to that or prepare a points list for that. So for planned games, we have campaign books that have come out recently, which I think are helping us out with scenarios or at least concepts for scenarios. What would you say for your planned games, Brian, are kind of the favored opponents of the Drukhari? Like what kind of armies would you want to play against when it comes to setting up a campaign? So like your time is limited, right? Like when it comes to actually taking the time to put together a narrative campaign, whether it be a 3-game narrative or a 4-game narrative or whatever, like I guess other Drukhari would be one choice.
God. That is the... Sorry, this is the second time when you've mentioned hot Drukhari on Drukhari action, and you heard me just kind of, I've gotten to play that game so few times because it's not a popular army, right? I mean, even now when they're really good, you just don't see as many, at least in our area locally, we don't have as many Drukhari players. But when you get to do that game, or even get close, like Craft World Eldar versus Drukhari, just that white-knuckled, we all have speed, it turns into this like beautiful orgy of maneuvering and firepower. It's just, sorry. I started smoking again in my head really quick, and I just quit. So we're good.
Okay, good.
Happened a couple times in the last episode of Splintermind too, when we were reviewing like the new traits. I was like, I started smoking again. I had a cigarette in my head, and now I've quit, and I'm back. I take it in the other direction for narrative campaign things, because for me, a big part of it is I would love to make so right now in Splintermind, we're doing like a mini 3-game one. We're doing it. Alex did the approach that you're talking about when he designed it. He was like, look, we're going to sort of explore things that happened in the Gathering Storm series and play it out a little bit more. So getting into Abaddon and the Black Crusade and Webway Gates and trying to secure these things and all that stuff. That's starting out with an opponent with a storyline and moving it forward. Here locally, because I don't have time to try, again, we don't have a store where people play at. I'm having to like garage hammer it a little bit. I prefer to actually take, okay, who do I have available and who would be down to do this? Like, I know in the next campaign, I'm pushing for it to be against Necrons, because the player that I played against last night, my buddy Josh, who plays Necrons a lot, we can work it that way. If that makes sense. I hope I'm answering the question you're asking, but I mean, I tend to look at, well, who's going to be down to do this, and what kind of a realistic story can we forge with that? And I prefer their storylines to match up. So like Necrons and Eldari, I mean, there's a very, literal ancient rivalry that's going on with those two. Yes. It's pretty easy to design a campaign from there. And then based on that, I would look at the opponent, how they like to play, to figure out like, well, once you've figured out the motivations of the sides, like what would a 3-game campaign or a 5-game, or how would they first interact with each other? Is it going to be like a planetary strike thing, or what is going to work? So for me, it depends on the opponent themselves as far as what missions I would like to go to.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a lot harder it makes it a lot harder to find an opponent when you limit yourself to what faction you want to play against, right? So, keeping in mind your kindred spirits and who you have available, first and foremost, before actually going through the trouble of writing out a huge narrative is probably a good call. It'll save you a lot of time and effort. In fact, even just saying, hey, man, would you like to play a 3-game narrative with me? It would suck to write out a whole thing and have them say, nah, that sounds dumb.
Yeah, no, I'm going to work on my Tyranids this quarter. I'm going to the whatever GT, and I need to hammer out my secondaries for ITC missions. You're like, oh, yeah, well, do you want to read my 50 pages of narrative that I wrote for it? No, not really. Okay, I'll just light a fire with it and keep my dying hopes warm for a couple seconds.
Mm-hmm. So I think with the Eldar, we talked earlier about, the fact that the Drukhari have plans within plans, all kind of culminating to this one glut of this one great big finishing move, right? So trying to keep that in mind for the missions might be a good idea, even to the point where maybe the first scenario should be like this kill team thing where you're just doing this one minor action to set up something that happens later. Or maybe there's a feint. You could actually play a game with a different faction with somebody else if you're going against say your real target is like this space marine force, but you need to strike at an Astra Militarum outpost first or something like that. Just kind of like building up to the final blow, really, to the final mission. Just try to, in a lot of ways, like one of the things we talked about before was working backwards from the goal to the inception, where you're actually when you you don't start from A to Z. You start from Z to figure out what your A is. And I think that's true for a lot of stuff. That's true for a lot of stuff in life.
Well, you're talking to a couple of teachers. It's called backwards design. It works in life too. Sometimes it helps to have an objective before you start down a path. Actually, it always helps. Never mind.
Yeah, I had that problem in D&D sometimes where I was like, oh, look at this cool thing. And then when it started snowballing, like, I don't know what that snowball is going to look like at the bottom of the hill. Right. Like, oh, I'm gonna hit that small Swedish town and everybody's going to die because I messed this up. And
besides ABBA, what did they ever do to us,
it's always good to
the poor
know.
Swedes.
Right, exactly. So I'd like to go over some. I went over the Vigilus books to see what scenarios I thought were best for use in Drukhari campaigns, and you don't have to use these specifically, but they contain elements that I think are really great for Drukhari campaigns, and I'll kind of go over them, and you guys can break in. So Convoy is like where the slower opponent is trying to get off the battlefield from short edge to short edge, while the Drukhari kind of strike from the sides. I played this one against Mike's Drukhari, actually, with my Astra Militarum Digas force, and it was a lot of fun. I did not make it off the battlefield edge with anything. Because of the way I had the terrain set. But I think it's a good one. Yeah, well done, Mike. Yeah, he even had skyboards. You're just like, boo, 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 boo. I'm like, oh no, my bag of wagons. Hold Your Gains is one where the defender holes up in the central ruin while the Drukhari surround them and grind them to dust. That's a really cool one. It might be a little too powerful, so you might need to go in with less points or power level than your opponent. Because I think that the fast movement of the Drukhari might be a little powerful. Storm the Lines is a sustained assault by an attacking force against a defender with 2 lines of defense. This one, again, I think this one would be really powerful for Drukhari, but if you have like Homunculus Covens or a Witch Cult attacker on foot, that might be a really interesting mission. But I think it might be best if you're doing like a Camera mission where you actually have territory to defend. It might actually be a good defense one for Drukhari if you're doing a Camera campaign. Running Battle is a classic rolling terrain battle, and that definitely befits like this Drukhari attacker who is running down their foe. But it might be better if the foe has vehicles, transports, and stuff. Behead the Viper is more intended as a Genestealer cult scenario, but it could be good for a Drukhari attacker. I think this is also one where Mike played Drukhari and I played Astra Militarum, where the defender's transport is trying to make it to a safe zone where there's a garrison waiting to protect them, and the attacker comes in. It's like corner to corner, and then the attacker comes in from the sides and tries to harry. This might be a good one for like if you're trying to capture slaves in a transport type thing. Vigilus Ablaze has From an Unexpected Quarter. I like this one way better than Hold Your Gains, because this is actually one where I think the Drukhari could be the defender, because it's got this central objective, which I think could be like Drukhari trying to funnel slaves into a webway portal, or maybe they're underground trying to gather information in like an underground information depot, and they're trying to just last out until they make their objective. So in this one, the attacker has recycling objectives, or recycling units. They're allowed to bring in units that have been destroyed throughout the game off a battlefield edge, but they can't come in off a battlefield edge that is capped by 2 enemy units. So the Drukhari could be flying around, capping their central objective, and kind of holding these battlefield edges with their transports, disallowing the attacker from bringing in reserves. and the attacker has to kind of destroy the defender's units in order to use those battlefield edges as a way of coming in from reserves. So I think that might be a good the Drukhari aren't holding. They're not trying to capture territory. They're trying to temporarily hold territory while an attacker comes in from all sides. Allies of Convenience is great for Craft World plus Drukhari 3-way with maybe a Chaos opponent in the center as on the defensive. This is basically a 3-player game. So it would be a cool one if you have like a Craft World buddy and you want to play against Chaos or against the Imperium or something like that. The Serpent's Lure, this is a really good Drukhari mission. It's another one with rolling terrain, but the extra tile is set up in... So there's this mini game, right, where the attacker tries to guess which quarter the defender is coming in on. So say you have your 2 tiles down, right? And you place the 3rd tile on one of the sides of the last tile placed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the defender writes down which side they think that the attacker's coming in on. And if they guessed correctly, they place a unit in from reserve on that tile. If they guess wrong, the attacker gets to place a unit in that tile from reserve. And the person who, if they guess right, they also get to place the terrain there. So like you're trying to outwit each other as you're going through this rolling terrain situation. I strongly recommend everybody read The Serpent's Lure in Vigilus Ablaze. It's a neat little mission. I really like it. I definitely want to try that one.
I didn't look at that one close enough because that sounds freaking amazing.
Yeah, it sounds fun. It sounds, if you guess wrong every time, you're pretty much screwed. But, it's only a 1 in 3. It's a 1 in 3 chance.
Just keep picking the same one. A broken clock is right twice a day. You'll be fine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So there are, we're not going to go into the obsessions until we talk about narrative army builds. This recording is already getting long. So I'm just going to really quickly go over Phoenix Rising right now. And plus, if you want to hear about Phoenix Rising, just tune into the Splintermind podcast.
That's a pro plug right there. Well done, sir.
Yeah, boom. So Phoenix Rising has theaters of war that are perfect for Eldari, Craft World and Drukhari alike. The Maiden World and the High Altitude, which, duh. And then they have 3 Echoes of War missions, which could be used for, you don't have, again, the Echoes of War missions, you don't always have to use the faction that's being used in them. But it's Sky Strike, which you defend.
Yes.
This is awesome. You defend 4 objectives that are anti-aircraft fire, and there's this whole mechanic with like how many airplanes they're shooting down throughout the game, depending on how many objectives are active. The anti-aircraft guns act like characters, so you have to wipe out the defenders on that anti-aircraft gun before you can shoot at them. Really cool mission. Plus, it's also uses the high altitude rules where, like, the battlefield edge is open air, and there are stratagems for knocking people off the edge.
Well, they have gusts of wind
really
and
cool.
everything. Like, it's an awesome.
Yes,
that mission is. I actually played that one when we play tested it, and I was like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm reading it like I really want to make a narrative battlefield for the top of a building. No, you have a baby.
Yeah.
No,
just
stop. Bold.
Just do it after the baby goes to bed. It's fine. I do it all the time, man. I got 2 kids. You gotta dig deep.
Supposed to
your
happen.
Hobby time. You have to make your hobby time now. It's not handed to you anymore. Because what's handed to you is a poopy diaper. You have to forge your hobby time.
Yeah, that's very true. That's true. Bitter Reversal.
God, these 2 are awesome.
Drukhari are disguised as Astra Militarum, and they've hoodwinked the Imperials into fighting the Ynnari. It's so cool. There's actually a stratagem for the Imperium to add Drukhari units to their army. And the Yunari are trying to escape from one long edge to a webway gate on the other long edge, while the Imperials and the Drukhari are in like this pincer maneuver. So that's really cool. I like that mission. I love the idea of adding units from a different army through a stratagem like that. Confrontation
well, I was
is...
say, if you're
go
into
ahead.
Drukhari, the whole backstory of these altered Drukhari and what that means to them to be like reforged as a human, it's like it's an ultimate punishment type of a thing to basically get turned into a monkey, more or less. But this next mission, though, this next mission is where it's at, and I explain it, and then I'll give you what I would do with it.
So it's basically the Eldari side. You're only allowed to take characters, and it's against demons of Slaanesh. I was thinking that we could use the Demise of a Legend character duel mechanic from Vigilus Ablaze for this one, because characters targeting characters is... It's a little easy, but then again, there are stratagems for the characters to be reborn because Yunari. I was reading the kind of description of this battle at the end of the book, and I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense for what happens in this
story. Mission. You have, again, it's supposed to be Ivrain and all the Yunari characters, the retinue, are caught, and Shalaxi is the head of the Slaanesh demons that are going after it. There's a mechanic where they recycle their troops, right? So it's just this grind. You're just trying to buy Ivrain time, right? I think flip it around. Get rid of Slaanesh demons, use Drukhari, and go after... You could insert almost any army in here, for going after a particular character. And this is just like the cut the heart out terror strike. Like, you are willing to expend all resources that you possibly have to do it. And then if you can find a way to give extra points to an Archon that ends up doing the final kill or something like that, that would definitely... There's a huge narrative with that, with them just ambushing the chain of command, to try to really sow, discord and terror. But you could use it also, you could use this mission and just replace the Slaanesh demons, still play against Yunari and Yvrain and the whole bit. Throw in the Covens, because Covens have absolutely no love and no time for this god of rebirth. That is cutting into their livelihood. This would be like Philip Morris as a faction going, wait a minute, so you're getting rid of nicotine completely? You found a way to just get rid of this scourge that has claimed the lives of millions across the world? We're having none of that. We're going to come in guns a-blazing and smoking, pun intended, to nuke it. So it's there. That's what I love about these Echoes of War missions, is that you can take them and use them for such a great basis, because they've done some of the mechanics, and then all you have to do is just tweak them a little bit based on the factions involved, and you've got a brand new fresh mission where you're not starting from scratch and having to test out the ideas quite as much.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It doesn't take if you're the kind of person who's playing narrative missions anyways, these will not be a problem for you to alter to your needs for your particular narrative. So there's also a name generator in here. So are you going to start naming your characters, Brian? Or
hey, you know what? I'm not going to start naming them, but I am going to roll some dice and come up with them, because I'm telling you, if you do a Space Marine captain, it's like Latinicus Maximus. You can just make up some Latin sounding Gothic whatever. When it comes to Eldar names, I have never. I hate naming characters, but an Eldar character to me is I just can't make up fake Eldar names. So for me, you bet your business I'm going to be rolling, and maybe I'll re-roll stuff that sounds a little silly, but I'm using that name generator all over the place in the campaign I'm doing right now.
The book also has Drazar and Incubi in it, and custom obsessions, and we're gonna talk about those in a second when we talk about narrative army builds after the break. I know this has gotten really long, but please stick with us. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Potty break, I need to have a potty break. I gotta pee. I've had a coffee and some water and some coffee and then some coffee again. Greetings, mofos.
Are you out of George Dickel number 8, staring at a broken chess machine?
Don't want to spend the rest of the year tied to that couch?
Well, why don't you head on over to the 1 Hour a Night Facebook page and see what exciting stuff is going on there. It's a place to post all your daily progress in the hobby grind, as well as receive and give positive feedback. Also, there are usually a few interesting challenges going on.
That's right. All you have to do is search for 1 Hour a Night on Facebook. That's numeral 1 Hour a Night, all one word. Blood serum tests will be administered prior to approval.
Se til helvete og kom dere vekk. Det ikke en bikkje, det en slags ting. Den imiterer en bikkje, men det ikke det. Kom dere vekk, idioter!
What he said.
Bloodraven's Chapter is a Facebook group set up and run by passionate fans of the mysterious Space Marine chapter. They have weekly features, regular competitions, and an encouraging community ethos designed to let people get the most from their hobby. Search for Plus Blood Ravens Chapter Plus on Facebook using the plus symbol if you're a fan or collector of these heroes of the Imperium. Knowledge is power, guard it well.
Hey, Masters of the Forge listeners, are you looking to expand your Warhammer 40,000 gaming group?
Do you want to start a 40k club in your area?
Do you want the people you attract to be like-minded mofos?
Do you want to advertise your YouTube channel?
Or even attract more subscribers to your hobby blog or online community?
Then what better way than to advertise on the Masters of the Forge podcast?
All we ask of you is that you email us at mastersoftheforge@gmail.com or message us on Facebook with a full text of your advertisement, including the region in which you live and any contact information people can use to get a hold of you.
We will have one of our many tech servitors read your advertisement on the air. We promise not to make fun of you.
Though we can't always predict the actions of our servitors, you really can't find good help these days.
No, you can't. Welcome back. So, after inhaling a large banana, I'm ready to talk about narrative army builds. No matter whether you, whether you play narrative scenarios or not, you probably, if you're listening to this podcast, would like to build your army from a narrative perspective. And I'm really glad we have Brian here to help us with this, because even after reading the Codex, I might be a little not sure how to go about doing it. It does help you it does help you learn about how the three branches do work together. Branches seems like a weird word to use for something that's certainly not it's not like a very regimented governmental entity, but it's really what it is. We have the Cabals, the Witch Cults, and the Homunculus Covens. And a Cabal is led by an Archon with their court, the Lamian, Medusae, Slith, and Urguls. And within the Cabal, there are warriors, warriors mainly make up the Cabal, right?
Yes.
Other than that, you just have Ravagers and the Flyers, which are vehicles. So that doesn't. So that's it. Warriors.
Yep.
Sit. Okay. Now then, you have Witch Cults, which are led by a succubus, and within there you have witches, Beastmasters, because these are the ones who they manage a lot to do with the fighting pits, right? Like the
yes.
So you have the Beastmasters, Reavers, Hellions. They're like the gang members of the of Camera, and of course they also have access to Flyers as well.
Yes.
The Homunculus Covens are they're led by Homunculus, and they have Racks, which are kind of their troops, Grotesques, Talos, and Kronos, which are their constructs. There are also mercenaries, which include incubi, scourges, and mandrakes. Scourges are the winged Drukhari. Mandrakes are a different species, if correct.
Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that there was like a Mandrake commander who, there was a whole deal with. I remember you guys talking about him, and he's no longer in the Codex, but like I guess he was weird.
Third edition, there were special rules for. I can't pronounce the name. It's one of those like super made up Eldari names, but it was known by the Decapitator. So it was supposed to be a mandrake that had been somehow surgically altered, had 4 arms, and the rules were terrible. The potential for it was there. So, I mean, so it does suggest there's some sort of a hierarchy with it. But, I mean, mandrakes essentially, you have to think of them as... what is the AOS unit? Is it like tree revenants or something where you have these like sort of like elf ghosts that are merged with the trees? So it's kind of like where with the fall and the psychic birth, you know, it's kind of like Eldari or Drukhari that were sort of stuck in certain realms for too long. So they're kind of Eldari demon-ish, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's right. The Decapitator. He had like piles of skulls or whatever, right? Like,
oh, not just piles of skulls. He's like collecting them. And so like in the fluff he has, like in his lair, he has this background where all of the skulls, like he's trying to find the perfect skulls to make this giant skull wall. And like he's blind, so he inspects it like with his long serpentine tongue. And he's like, oh, this one works. And he'll climb up on the thing and put it in this position. And they're just like thousands or millions of skulls that are all pointing in one particular direction. And it's like, okay, when it reaches critical mass, are all these things gazing at this portal going to open it and do a thing, or what is it? Nobody knows. Nobody cares. It's Decapitator.
That sounds awesome. All right. So those are the 3 branches of like Drukhari military society, I guess.
Yes.
Plus the mercenaries, and any of the groups can use the transports, the raiders and the vipers. No,
Venoms.
That's it. So using them combined seems to be the most accepted way. I don't know. Like if you were to put together a narrative army, you could use what's the name of it? There's a special detachment rule for Dark Eldar that lets you take 3 patrol detachments, raiding force. You get 4 command points extra if you use 3 patrol detachments, which really helps because there's really only one HQ, one like unnamed HQ in each of the branches. So the Cabal, it's the Archon, the Witch Cult, it's the Succubus, the Homunculus Covenants, the Homunculus. So having two Archons kind of makes sense. Some of the guys on the Splintermind group helped me out. Like, you know, there's also, you know, you can use another Archon as like a sub-Archon, or as a Lamian, even though there's a Lamian in the book. Like, you could actually have 2 Archons, but, like, I guess a Homunculus could have an assistant who's, like, coming up, and a Succubus could also have a buddy.
Well, and Homunculus Covens have multiple homunculi. I mean, they'll have sort of like this inner circle. So them having multiples, or even, like, a Succubus, too. You know, I mean, you can have several that are in that. The Archon one does get a little problematic, because we think of an Archon as being ahead of an entire thing, but they used to have kind of a lieutenant version in the old rules called a Dracon. And you can just play it, you know, okay, they have the same stats, but whatever. It's the same type of thing.
Right. But this rule, this raiding force rule, lets you just take 3 patrol detachments, and you could have, 1 HQ in each one, and then, you know, and not be limited to, and not be forced to take a whole bunch of HQs for a whole bunch of battalion detachments if you don't want to.
Right.
It's still, I mean, obviously, if you can go 3 battalions, that's still 18 command points, so that would be pretty great. But, you know, at least in this case, you can they've provided us with the ability to go full, you know, combined arms Drukhari without getting too crazy with the HQs. And
the beauty of that one, too, is they also have a stratagem Alliance of Agony that's 1 point. Right, and as long as your Archon is the Warlord, if you take a Coven, a witch cult and a cabal, those three different patrols, you actually can, for one command point, generate warlord traits for all three HQs.
That's so cool.
Which is cool. But I mean, and also too, like my buddy Jody was like, he pointed out, like when this book first came out, he was like, I love it because he's like, it's kind of like all these like individual, he always thinks of Drukhari as being like these individual crime syndicates that will like join together to do a job kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like they don't trust each other. You can't look the other way for 2 seconds, but you kind of have a common objective that you're all working towards. So he likes the idea of having these like highly factionalized. So I've never played the like 6 patrol version of this one in a narrative game, but just because my brain doesn't want to keep track of that many things.
That sounds like a lot, yeah.
But it would be fun because you could have, you know, like, okay, these are my, you know, this faction over here, these are the guys doing this sort of a thing, and you can have them. But it would just be a lot to keep track of, especially now with the new, you know, choose your own adventure obsession system.
Right. I think if you're the kind of person, I think that rule, the 6 patrol thing, that's probably made for people with collections like I have orcs.
Yes.
Where there might be people out there who love Drukhari so much that they have multiple paint schemes, they might have more than one Drukhari army.
Sure.
It's like I could see someone doing this if they were like, oh, I have a couple, you know, I have three cabals that I have going, and I'll take, you know, a little bit from each one, and I have 2 witch cults I've painted up. I'll do a little bit from each one or whatever. Yeah. So I could definitely see that. That would be really cool. I mean, hey, the option is there, right? So that's good. So do you think it makes sense for do the Homunculus Covens, it seems like it would be hard to include them in a combined raiding force because you can't put them all in transports, right? Or is that where you'd start using like webway gates and stuff?
Well, I mean, you aren't combining them in each other's transports, but they can just bring their own. So for me, it doesn't. Right. Well, then again, I pretty much start my list with Coven units. So for me, it's always, am I bringing another faction along? You know, so it's which sounds weird. And the funny thing is, until recently, like I constantly, especially on the show, I mean, back when Thor was on it, I used to catch crap for it, you know, all the time for playing the least optimal. And now people are like, Rax are the best troop unit in the game. And I'm like, well, you know, I played them when they quote sucked, and they're fun. They do their thing.
Uh-huh.
So the Rax are the troops.
Yes.
Right? So those are infantry, and those can go in a transport. And so can your...
The only thing they can are the paint engines. I mean, because the grotesque they just count as 2 models for transport capacity. So you can throw 4 of those and 2 homunculi in a raider, and you're good to go. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. And you could kind of say that, you know, the paint engines are they can fly and stuff.
Yes.
And they have they're kind of vehicles in and of themselves. They're little dreadnoughts, dark Eldar dreadnoughts. So, okay, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, the combined arms force. Now, do you see a lot of people that just go with like just Cabal or just Witch Cult? I feel like that it would be really hard to just do Cabal.
Well, if you're playing an army that just has Drukhari in it, Cabal tends to be the way to go, but I think it's mostly because it's really a shooting edition. And they do it really well for a really cheap cost. I would say probably right now, I mean, it depends on what type of play you're looking at. But I would say that probably witch cults, for non-competitive play, I would say that people probably before were doing Cabals and witch cults because they're sort of like the most accessible, and from a price standpoint, it makes sense. Like they're the cheapest units to buy physically in real life cash dollars versus racks, which are, my God, I'm so glad that I bought as many racks as I did before I had children, because I couldn't afford to start a Coven army today. There's no way. But competitively, you probably see the rack option just because racks are cheap and durable and can hold objectives, and ITC formats favor stuff that doesn't do much but doesn't die, kind of a thing.
Obsession
and Cabals give very mobile shooting, so.
Okay.
So, yeah, but as far as, how they play well together, I think all three of them dance and groove pretty well together. They complement each other really well.
Awesome. So are there a lot of currently index options that make some of these more I know that there used to be what are they, Trueborn squads that had
God rest in power Trueborn.
Lots of special weapons, because with in matched play people aren't going to be able to use those in most events very soon, and I think a lot of the time even narrative players are well, I really don't want to. I have a couple guys at my local who even I'm like, guys, I'm playing my buddy Mike, the Dark Eldar player. I'm like, dude, you could just use command point reroll again. I don't care. We are playing a narrative mission. He's like, I don't want to do that. I don't. They're your command points. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I don't care if you use them up right now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Use two in the same phase. I don't care. But people still don't wanna. They still don't want to do that. So I'm gonna kind of glaze over the index options because it's just they're just disappearing.
Well,
so.
I will say this. So early on, as soon as we worked on the codex, so I had a head start on it, and I joked on the show that we had I had 6 months to cope with the trauma and loss of things like Trueborn, and I'm using giant sarcastic finger quotes, which is great radio. I'm one of those that even though they introduced the flow chart of confusion where it's you can still do this, and the way that I see it, they are testing and playing this game they aren't doing it based on index options. And so for the longest time, I was I'm just going to go rip the Band-Aid because I had two fully converted, and real converted Trueborn units. They were one of my favorite units. I love the background behind them. That's a unit that I hope they bring back at some point, but make it a different thing instead of, it's the elite unit with all the shooty stuff. That's a unit you can plug into just about any codex, right? And get the, Stern Guard or whatever generic version of it. But I could see if I was playing one that was like a Cabal focused one where I was going exclusively with Cabal and mercenaries, I could see using a Trueborn unit just to provide a little bit of damn variety on the table. But other than that, I skip the index stuff because it's just that stuff is clearly not designed to last.
No.
That was just a Band-Aid patch job, and I understand in competitive play it allows you to take some options that you couldn't do and all that stuff, but I'm it's just not how I think the game is intended to play.
For
and
how long?
I've just eliminated
you really
it.
should. People need to get used to using not that.
Yeah.
You're hurting yourself by giving yourself a crutch from the index at this point.
Yes.
But, if you're playing in a narrative game and you're like, well, I really would like to bring my Trueborn to this scenario because they have to do, maybe there's something special that needs to happen. That's totes fine.
Yeah.
But I what you said about the mercenary, I think if you are going heavily Cabal, I think you really should make use of those mercenaries because there's not a lot there.
Yeah. And the mercenaries are awesome.
And they're freaking rad.
They're cool as hell.
I want a full 10-man unit of Incubi so I can bring... I think they're just so cool looking. I kind of wish the transports had space for 11 people, though. It seems weird.
Well, if you check out the Forge World page, they do have a transport with room for 16.
Oh, yeah. The giant catamaran of doom.
It's so awesome. It's so amazing.
So anyways, why don't we, I would like to go through the custom obsessions from the new book.
Yes.
But I think I want to do it in a way that the same way we did the Space Marine chapter tactics, and go through the secondary, the lesser houses, and assign them obsessions.
Yes.
And I've done this ahead of time, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not.
Sure.
But we can blow through these and kind of give a little. I think they almost I almost feel like they went through them and tried to assign them themselves because a lot of them just fit, and they fit almost perfectly. It's really funny. So, the Cabal of the Last Hatred, they're the ones that create the still living works of art from their foes. I would give them Meticulous Flayers, which means they always benefit from Eager to Flay, which lets them reroll charges, which for them, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then Soulbound, which allows them to reroll Inured to Suffering rolls of 1, or Inured to Suffering if they don't have it already. What doesn't have Inured to Suffering?
Vehicles.
I looked through there and everything... Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I did notice that. I'm like, so these guys who are really good at flaying, their vehicles really like to be hurt as well.
Yeah.
That's
Why
the
not?
Feel No Pain. Oops. I just broke something. Anyways, what do you think? What do you think, Brian? Makes sense?
No, you absolutely nailed it. I'm like looking through your list here going, yeah, I can just kind of, my nod game is going to be on point because I think you're nailing these pretty well.
Cool. Cabal of the Dying Sun, they're the ones that are Trueborn. Disdain for lesser beings.
Yes.
I don't even need to describe that, but no more than one model can flee a failed morale check. And then Toxin Crafters, I figured these guys would try to work from the shadows more often because there's not many of them left and they want that edge in combat. And so they have +1 to damage with poisoned weapons when a 6 to wound is rolled. And remember, that's like a lot of the weapons.
Yeah, it's all the weapons basically. And the reason why I like that pairing for the second ability is that Trueborn were known, the Trueborn unit, when it was a thing, they were known for having more exotic equipment than their normal ones. So having the entire army with better poisoned rifles just makes sense.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I basically made my entire Cabal that, if I did that with my Cabal, I would have made them all Trueborn, basically. Cool. Next, we have the Lords of the Iron Thorn. They are the Spacefarers that we were talking about. So they would get Mobile Raiders, which is the same ability that the Splintered Fang? No.
Mobility is Flayed Skull.
Flayed Skull, that's it.
Yeah.
Flayed Skull have for units that fly. Then I would also give them Webway Raiders, which allows them to use Webway Portal 1 additional time per detachment per game. So normally you're only allowed to use Webway Portal once per game, per detachment. And it's 1 command point for 1 unit and 3 command points for 2 units. So you can technically do 2 units for 2 command points with this, which might be really cool if you really just can't bring yourself to bring that many transports. It lets you have the Mobile Raiders, which can fly and everything, and then also maybe have a unit or 2 of warriors on foot that you just deep strike in. Cabal of the Broken Sigil, they're the Sowers of Chaos. So give them Dark Mirth, -1 leadership for units within 6 inches. Duh. And then Deadly Deceivers, that lets them fall back and charge, and then they deal 1 mortal wound to a unit that charges them on a dice roll of 6. So like they have like traps that they set or something as they come in.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool, awesome. So then we have the cults, the Cult of the Seventh Woe. They love their experiences in sadism. Like they really like hurting others. So they have the Art of Pain, +1 per round, +1 round to the power from pain. So like you act as if you're 1 level or 1 round further for power from pain rolls. And also give them Stimulant Innovators because they love stimming themselves. So they get this Hyper Stim Backlash Stratagem for 1 CP instead of 2.
Yeah.
It basically doubles their it literally doubles their their stimulant bonus, which is actually pretty cool. It's stuff like +1 attack, so it'd be +2 attack for everybody. That's kind of crazy. For 2 CP, it's not as great because you like take mortal wounds after on when the turn's over. You take a bunch of mortal wounds, but it's fine. It's 1 CP. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Cult of the Blade Denied. They use their enemy's strengths against them. So you give them Precise Killers. Wound rolls of 6, increased AP by 1. And then Test of Skill, which is +1 to wound big models. So they're trying to kind of prove themselves.
Yep.
And again, use their strength against them. So I figured that made a lot of sense for them. Cult of the Wrath Unbound. They're the ones that go into that killing trance. And there's literally an ability called, literally an obsession called Berserk Fugue.
Yes.
Which seems made for them.
Yes.
Rolls of 6 to hit in charge situations deal additional hits. And then there's one Slashing Impact, which gives them kind of like an impact hit when they charge in. For every model that charges in on a 5+, they deal a mortal wound. That's actually, for witches, that's actually pretty freaking great, because the more you can tip the balance in your favor on the counterattack, the better, because you're toughness 3.
Yes.
Cult of the Pain Eternal. They're all about like extinguishing hope in a population. So they're the ones that like just make you feel hopeless. They're like trying to kill your gods. So they're they gave them trophy takers, which the description of trophy takers doesn't seem like it would fit that. It would fit that group, but what it does is the opponent rolls 2 dice and takes the highest for morale. So I kind of think that kind of represents the what they actually do has an effect in that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then I would also give them Art of Pain as well, which is kind of it's a good generic one, anyways. So like the +1 round to your power from pain. I would definitely like your input on these. There were only 2 Homunculus Coven like lesser groups in the book. So
I have a third one ready to roll for you, because with the old Homunculus Covens ones, there are several more, and there's one that I've got one ready to roll.
All right, cool. So the Black Descent, these are the trap makers. They have Dark Harvest, which gives impact hits on a 5+ for each charging model. The way Dark Harvest was described isn't like basically the one that's the same exact rules for the witches.
Exactly like it.
Actually, it represents them actually having like springing traps as they go in. So okay, that makes sense for them. Then Dark Technomancers, they can enhance ranged weapons, dealing +1 wound, +1 damage. But they basically are like gets hot weapons. Then the Hex, they're the ones that send forth the hordes of creations. So I gave them Experimental Creations, +1 strength, +1 wound with poison versus less tough enemies, which again is probably most of their weapons. And then Obsessive Collectors, when an enemy model is destroyed in melee, heal D3 wounds, or racks regain D3 models. Real quick, Brian, is that as crazy as I think it is?
It is, and we talked about this in our review that we just put out yesterday. I strongly suspect, and I played a game with it yesterday, and we played it the way I think it's going to get FAQ'd. I think it's going to be a once per round thing, because otherwise, or once per phase thing, it only happens in the fight phase, because otherwise, as written, you could have 3 racks go in and charge, do 3 wounds, and then you get D3 back per wound caused. I think it's going to be if a unit causes wounds, they can either heal D3 wounds or return D3 racks, because at that point it's not as obnoxious. But as written, you could it is bananas as written. So when I played it yesterday, and we did it with the once per thing, because I played against Necron, so I was like, oh, this will be fun because we'll both be annoying, right? We both will keep getting back up, and it was fine when we played it like that. So yes, it does seem crazy, and we mentioned this on our review of this on the show. I was like, I think within a week, we were like, I think Alex joked, enjoy it while it's there, because it'll probably be gone next week. I just don't see that going forward. As written, it's bananas.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Like, that's even worse than Necrons.
Yes.
Cool. So what coven did you have in mind?
So the one that I did, one I'm kind of partial to, the Ebb and Sting are known for, if you go back to the old Homunculus Coven supplement, their whole deal is they are master poison crafters and master pain engine designers, right? So with going through the Coven ones, Master of Mutagens, I definitely think you need to use for the whole poison thing. And so what that one does is unmodified hit rolls of a 6 automatically wound the targets for poison weapons. And there are a lot of them. I mean, the racks are carrying poison weapons. There are all sorts of things. For the second one, it's kind of a toss-up for me because I can make an argument for the Dark Technomancers one, which is the one where when you're doing a shooting attack, you can basically go YOLO mode and add 1 to the damage, to the wound and damage rolls. 1 to the wound roll and 1 to the damage, but any wound rolls of a 1 cause a mortal wound back on you. So I could see that as sort of like using that. Or the other one would be the experimental creations, to just have more efficient and stronger pain engines and those types of things. And I can tell you, I mean, from a tabletop standpoint, all those things work really well together too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. And I love that. I love that they've been very careful not to put the most crazy abilities in there, or if they do, you can only take one thing if it's crazy, or it can't be. They've been very careful about combining two things that could be crazy together. So that's really good. That's both the Space Marines and the Drukhari ones. I haven't looked at the craft worldy ones yet, but I assume it's the same. So
with the Drukhari ones, the other thing you're giving up too is you're giving up the custom warlord traits, right? So you're having to go with, the 3, you only get 3 options for your HQ choices, right? Because instead of having, I guess you could use book ones or whatever, but it's like, you only have 3 homunculus ones. You only have 3 ones for an Archon or 3 for a Succubus. So you're giving up that, and you're also giving up the custom relics. And there are relics that, if you're playing Red Grief, the Bloodglaive is hot sex drenched in gasoline and lit on fire. It is the best thing. Or like you're getting rid of like the Vexeter Mask, if you're using Prophets of the Flesh or things like that. So you are giving stuff up, but when you're playing in a narrative campaign, if you want to make the background for these things, these traits are, to me, the traits are worth it because you're clearly not going for efficiency when you're trying to make these match with the background, because the combinations you came up with are perfect for these things. If I'm sitting there as a competitive player, I would look at these options and choose different ones because they pair differently. But if you're using these to best recreate the background of a specific faction, you're not doing it for the most efficient thing, right? You're doing it wrong at that point. So these systems are just perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm really pleased with it. And I think I've figured out my raiding party. We talked about this over a year ago on your podcast, I think. Like what I wanted to do like a Ynnari force, but I don't want to take any of the named characters. Right. And I kind of I was going to do Craft World and Drukhari, but I've really fallen in love with the models after painting like 800 points worth. I kind of really, really, really like the Dark Eldar stuff more than I like the Craft World stuff. And I'm not really super into the Frankenstein's monster stuff. So I was like, I kind of just want to do like a Cabal and a Witch Cult battalion and have them work together. I still want them to be very Corsair-like, like a very mobile raiding party that uses the webway and is in league with the Ynnari, but working independently. So for my Cabal, I was going with mobile raiders, so plus 3 inches for flying, and webway raiders, so that I can because obviously they're experts in traversing the webway. And then for my Witch Cult, I was thinking about going with, since I kind of tried to find one that would be great for a mobile mounted raiding force for the Witch Cult, and I thought the Slashing Impact was really good for that. because they're kind of jumping out of the transport and smashing into the enemy. And then stimulant innovators, like they're just sitting on their little ships, getting jacked up on whatever drugs they've got. And when they jump in for that initial strike, they're just freaking goosed up. They're like goosed up on goofballs, ready to kill. Yes. Like not even thinking about any of it. So I figured that's probably what I'm gonna go for. With my raiding party.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man. Sorry, I'm just like thinking back to my game that I was playing last night and just some of the combinations on these things. I'm so happy that racks aren't just getting pigeonholed into they stand on things and don't die, and that's why people take them. Mm-hmm. The Coven obsessions allow them to actually play aggressively, and in a narrative campaign, your Coven wouldn't just stand there and not die. Mm-hmm. You know, like you have to do something in a campaign, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not dying is not doing anything. You're
especially for the Drukhari. Like
yes, I mean they need something, and I love that these allow you to bring out the background of those old cults and cabals and things like that, and covens that just haven't gotten rules yet, and it just feels better, you know. And I think it gives people that usually play competitively the opportunity to not, like, if you look at the Coven ones, the 3 that they have, the Prophets of the Flesh one, you see it all the time because it's just clearly so much better than the other ones, you know. And now it's like, okay, you don't feel like you're actively screwing yourself by taking the other ones, you know, just for the sake of a narrative thing. Like, you actually get to take stuff and you're like, oh, these give me new ways to play these units, and they're more fun, you know. And if you aren't having fun in your narrative games and taking stuff to have fun, what are you doing, you know?
Yeah, what are you doing? And build your army, and even if you're playing narratively, you know, it behooves you to craft your army in such a way that it makes sense with the rules you're picking for it. So all of these, so for example, it would be silly of me to take the mobile raiders obsession and not have transports. Like, why would I? What am I doing with my life at that point? I am kind of salty that all the jet bikes and stuff are in the witch cult, but that's fine. You do you, witch cult.
And all Drukhari players since 5th edition. I want my my Archon needs a gun hat riding a jet bike with a glaive, and you're like, yeah, let it go, buddy, it's okay. You thought the index was bad. We have people that are still pissed off that gun hatting isn't a thing, and I'm like, yeah, you need to. It's an actual hashtag we came up on the show. If somebody starts reminiscing too hard about old stuff that's been gone for a few editions, you're like, hey, hashtag gun hatting. So
that's awesome.
But to go back to an earlier point, or we were talking before about design, right? Uh-huh. And the thing that I like about it reverses the process. I mean, if you only have a set of 2 or 3 ways, or 3 or 4 options as far as like special rules and things like that with obsessions for Drukhari, you're looking at the obsession and then designing an army around that. With this choose your own adventure system, you're taking the play style, how you like to play the game, and going backwards, you know, taking the units you like to use and how you like to play them, and you're figuring out the obsessions that help them play and bring that style that you like to the table, if that makes sense. So it can work. Like, absolutely. I like to play I'm an orc player when I play Drukhari Coven, you know. Honestly, I love assault. I love just slamming into things. I love cutting up stuff. They add in like the, you know, failing leadership stuff, you know, with leadership shenanigans, things and stuff like that. But it's like the other obsessions didn't really do that quite as well. But now with this new system, it's like I actually feel like I can play that aggressive way that I want to, and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's the conclusion I'm drawing from these really, you know, from the Space Marines and from this book. It's a lot of work. It's hard. Like playtesting this stuff and making sure it's powerful enough that people want to use it in matched play, but not so powerful that it creates a crazy combination that breaks everything. Like it's not surprising that this that the choose your own adventure obsessions weren't in the original book because it's a lot.
Yeah,
And
it's too much.
It's nice to know that it's going to be for other factions other than Space Marines, but I would also expect it to take a little time for them to build these as time goes on. But that's fine. We want Games Workshop to take their time with this stuff. That way, people don't have to complain about it changing all the time.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at it too, these obsessions that they included were in. If you, God, I hate to keep referencing stuff that I've seen online, but like some people will look at one of the guys that started the darkcity.net, Polly Wallace, like posted in our Patreon group. He was like, "Oh, I'm at this event. This is the breakdown of what factions are represented." And for the Cabals, it was like there was a lot of Blackheart, but the other stuff was showing up. Like it all has uses, right? Witch Cult, same thing. Like there was one or two that showed up a little bit more, but Covens there literally was only one. And what I like with the choose your own adventure thing is that it's bringing options that weren't there before, because Games Workshop does recognize that certain things, when they see something showing up over and over again, they are far more responsive as far as giving you new ways to play it, if that makes sense. And so that's what I hope to see going forward with all these Psychic Awakening books, is when they give new factions and things, they're clearly like trying to reset and make sure that units are going to be played in a different way, sort of a way that was intended, or just other ways, instead of just seeing the one-trick pony, ridden around the same block every time.
Right. Well, like you said, there were only, 2 Covens?
Well, there were 3, but effectively there was 1. Because the other 2 were okay, but the one was just... you felt dumb not taking it, because it's just so clearly so much better than the other ones. And I felt dirty, like I was a competitive player taking it all the time, but it was like, it's so much easier. So,
yeah, definitely. And that's hard to let go of, when something is just clearly better. It's really hard to let go of. So it's nice to know that Games Workshop is being responsive, and these supplements are so great. This one is real nice. I really like it. It's not narratively, I don't think it's super strong, but it is nice. There's a lot of rules in it that'll help you with your narrative games. So everyone go out and pick it up if you haven't already, and listen to the Splintermind podcast to hear more about what went into creating this beautiful work of art. We're gonna shut it down right here. Come back and close out the show.
Come on, Max, get the ball. Mom, Max won't get the ball. He's lazy.
I think I know why your Zote is being lazy, Jenny.
Why, Mom?
Because you forgot to feed him his Zotobix today.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Zotobix contains all the nutrients and random animal parts a growing Zote craves. It not only provides our Zote with the energy it needs to play with you and protect our home, but it also keeps its chitinous shell fresh and shiny.
Oh, boy. I'd better feed Max his Zotobix.
Yes, you had.
Zotobix is made in part from grade
Max,
A
time for
Astra
dinner.
Militarum post-engagement byproduct and is infused with 112 essential vitamins
No,
and
Max,
minerals
down.
harvested from your Zote's natural habitat, the finest desert depths. Zotobix is available in any shopping center on worlds where Zotes are allowed or where the Imperium's inexorable influence has not yet reached.
Hey, mofos. Are you looking for more Warhammer 40k video content? Well, the Scarred Cast posts regular battle reports as well as tactics and strategy videos. Be sure to check out all the cool hobby content for the avid tabletop wargamer. That's Scarred Cast, Skared on YouTube.
Oi! After an hard day's shopping, I like to head down to the pub and enjoy a good brew with me mates. Shopping hummies all day is hard smelly work, so I likes to tap myself up with something nice. Chopper body spray is not just a treat for you, it's a treat for the whole crew. Now available in Green Apple Grunt, Illinois After Dark, and Oops Don't Press That Fragrances. Chopper body spray, don't make me axe you twice.
This is Rob Sanders, and you're listening to the Masters of the Forge, where the world of 40k comes to life on your tabletop.
This is David Annandale, and you're listening to Masters of the Forge, where they bring the world of Warhammer 40,000 to life on your tabletop.
All right, next week or next month or whatever, I don't know. I think I'd like to save these campaign episodes for when there is a release. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I mean, yeah. I don't get releases quickly, but we can do them easily then. Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps us get the most recent rules, right?
Yeah.
So if we did Tyranids right now, it would be old hat, right?
Yeah.
But if a supplement comes out that has Tyranid rules in it, then yeah, all right, let's do a Tyranid book or a Tyranid review. But Brian, thank you so much for coming on,
of course,
on our show. It was a lot of fun having you. You're a nice man.
Thank you.
Your heart may be black, but it's mirrored. It's like it's an obsidian. You have an obsidian heart, not a coal heart.
Yeah, and it's right behind the sternum. We can easily find it. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, I think.
That was a compliment.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. But until then,
play the game the way you want to.
That's right. Gun hat. Hashtag gun hat.
This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com. The music used in this podcast was made by Parad of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission.
It's such a good feeling to play games your way. It's such a happy feeling 40K'ing away. And when you throw dice with story in mind, it's such a wonderful way to unwind. It's a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that we'll be back when the fortnight's new, and we'll have new ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. We will too.